Well, guys, how y'all doing? I have had to change a lot of stuff around, as you can probably see so far. There's some stuff going on, and a couple things to note. I'm gonna give just like a few seconds to see what you guys say if the audio levels are late or messed up compared to the video. If so, I'm gonna change that really quick.
Bixby voice privacy contents have been updated. To continue.
Thank you, phone. Anyway, so I'm gonna wait to see how you guys what you guys tell me about the audio, and then we'll get it going from there. We'll see how it goes. Also, the other thing that I can't seem to figure out is randomly. Okay, I thought so. I'm gonna do this then. Sony camera. Give me 1 second. Okay. Let's try that. All right, so let me know if that is a little bit better. Yeah, my hat brim is a little bit less straight than normal. Okay, what seems to be early? The video? Is the video happening before the audio? I'll do this. Okay, I'm gonna do it one more time. Let me know how that goes. That actually looked like, watching the audio levels, it looked like that was good. Perfecto, it's very good. All right, so it's nice that I figured out how to do that. That's a little good. It's more gooder right there, I'll tell you that, boys. Okay, so thank you guys for that. Really, all that was a ruse to get more comments, so my rankings are higher on YouTube. No, I'm just kidding. So this is like trying to figure out lead. That's pretty funny. Okay, so here is the deal for today. It's going to be, you know what? It's kind of weird. Let me just fix this. Sorry, guys. I've been in the middle of like all of this stuff that I've had to do recently, and I just got back from the Open, and I was using my camera and a bunch of other stuff. So it is a little bit out of whack here. I can tell you that much. Okay. I like that better. My OCD is better because the position in the frame that I was in was very strange. Anyways, so today's episode is going to be a little strange. It's or different. It's actually not strange. It's going to be awesome. I'm really excited for this one. I took a lot of time to prepare for this, and I have some notes. So. It does sound normal for me. I'm gonna be periodically looking down here to check my notes out, and you'll see me reading some. and I'm going to do it in a much more organized and structured format. So, anyways, let's just start it off by saying this, that if you are, because this audio is going to be transferred into an audio only version that's going to be released as just the normal podcast for everybody, because this is a prepared and planned episode. If you're listening to this episode on audio only, this is going to be a live YouTube video, and so I would, number one, encourage anybody who's listening to this later on to participate in the live YouTube videos, because I can answer questions and do a bunch of really cool interactive stuff. But also in terms of an educational standpoint, there's a little bit more gooder availability to learn stuff because of the things that I can pull up on the screen. And so today's episode is going to be pulling up a lot of stuff, going through analyses and stuff like that. And you're going to be able to see, if you're just listening to this audio only, it's going to be hard to pay attention to and keep track with what I'm talking about. But if you can watch it on the screen, it'll be a lot easier to follow along. Anyways, with that being said, welcome to Series 3 of the Journey Podcast. We got through the first series, we got through the second series, and now we're on to the third one. Just a little recap for everybody. Series 1 was called The Beginning. In that series, we introduced everything by setting goals and building a plan to accomplish your goals, understanding the mental component and requirement to practice, and building a perfect practice plan. We talked about all those categories, went through in depth on them. If you're just now catching up to the podcast, you might want to go back to the beginning in Series 1. Series 2, it was called First Results. We basically introduced that by talking about what to expect in your first tournament results. We introduced self-awareness and the impact that it has on our competitive performance. And we talked about learning how to use that self-awareness to deal with high-pressure situations. I did a lot of those episodes with interviews of my students. So a 3-part interview series with a student of mine, Curtis Dunbar, who is probably on this live right now. And then another interview with a student of mine named Dawson Palmer, who had a really cool breakout performance and I thought was interesting to talk about. So that was Series 1 and 2. For Series 3, we're going to be building on that. It all kind of goes together, and there's a lot of fluidity and synergy with all of this. But Series 3, we're going to be calling it Learning to Compete. Or if you feel like you already know how to compete, I would say that you're a liar, because I still have yet to figure this out. So anyways, the goal, I'm going to read this off. The goal of the series is going to be to build upon the foundation laid by the first 2 series and get more in depth with actual tournament scenarios and how to learn to compete successfully, but based off of a continuous focus on self-awareness, self-assessment, or self-awareness and self-assessment, in order to restructure and build upon the plan that we worked together to lay out in Series 1 and then initiated in Series 2. So that's the purpose of Series 3. It's going to be starting off with this one, which is titled basically How to Learn and Improve After Your First Major Performance. So there is a slight hum in the video. I can decrease my gain, and I'll bring this a little closer. I'm trying not to get it in the thing, but we'll listen. Boy, that's going to drive me crazy. Ron, the things I do for you. Anyways, so I also will add that if you are listening to this audio only episode, it's going to be a little bit weird. It's not going to be as precise and streamlined as normal, because I'm going to be interacting with people and responding to comments. I'm echoing. Let's see. I'm only showing one audio input, and it's not showing any echo, so I don't really know. Yeah, 34 HTS. There is a weird shadow going down the video. That was the reason why I was late to starting this by 5 minutes, because as soon as I turned my camera on, having not touched the settings at all, apparently now there's some weird thing going on, and I think it has to do with the flicker rate of the lights in my room. They operate off of a software on my phone and I just had to update them. And I believe that it changed something. So I think that the flicker rate of the lights is offset with the shutter speed of the camera, or the frame per second of the camera, and I couldn't figure out how to fix that quick enough. So yeah, but it's very annoying to me. I feel like I'm about to fall over. Every time I look at the video and the shadow starts going down, I feel like I'm like losing it or something. So sorry guys, bear with me for that for this episode, but I will get it fixed. So anyways, there's one thing that I want to mention. It basically, I want to just pull us back a few weeks, and I want to bring up, for those of you that are going to be new to the podcast, what I consider to be the most important episode of all of this whole thing that I've done so far. And that is Series 1, Episode 3. The title of it is Understanding the Mental Component to Optimizing Practice. And I'm not going to spend the time in this episode to talk about what that goes into, but this is what I will say. A lot of people pay me money to teach them, and they spend a lot of their hard-earned money on lessons and a lot of their hard-earned money on practicing. And you really cannot take advantage of your investment in this game if you don't know what I talk about in that episode. And in my opinion, that is the most valuable episode that I have ever done, that I don't know if I ever can do a more valuable episode. I can only ever go back, retouch on that, and get a little bit more in depth with it. But that's the best. It's the most valuable resource that anybody has, and it's completely free. And it's 2 hours and 40 minutes long. And for the 2 hour and 40-minute investment of your time, you will save years off of your life in terms of your progressment towards getting as good as you want to be in this game. And that's not a joke if you do this for your whole life. So, dead serious. Very good. Okay, so got some little quick exciting news real quick that I want to go over first, and then I will get into the content of this episode. So, the exciting news is, actually, let me pull this up so I can get the link for it real quick. Where are you? Okay. Okay, are you ready, guys? I'm very excited about this. Okay, here we go. I'm going to transfer over to a new screen, all right? Bear with me. Bear with me. Okay. This is the new Journey podcast, BAREPELT Vest. I'm very excited that it is out. I'm going to throw my gum out. I'm very excited for this to be finally out. It is a crazy looking vest because I'm crazy and I like to stand out. I'm definitely going to have new and different podcast vests available that are going to come out in the future. I don't know when. I haven't started designing any of them yet. But for the first one that I released for the podcast, I wanted it to be really unique and stand out. Essentially what I'm trying to do is make it to where if you're wearing this and you're on the other side of the gun club, I know that you're wearing this vest. And so will everybody else. And I think it's a really cool design. There's actually, believe it or not, it's not just a random pattern. There's a lot of really cool math involved in the pattern of the design on it that I created using some cool artificial intelligence AI stuff. So you can purchase the vest at barepelt.com, and I have a cool little exciting deal for you guys if you do. Which, give me 1 second. I'm going to switch over to the other frame. Okay, so here is the actual design of the vest. This one is one that was made for me, so you see my name on the vest. Obviously, yours would have your name. That is actually exactly what it is, Autonomotion. I don't know how to pronounce it, but Rorschach test. That's kind of what it is. But anyways, very good. That's impressive. But anyways, so The cool little surprise for it is that what I'm going to do is I'm going to be running a little social media, um, I guess, contest for the vest where if you do decide to purchase the vest, I want you to, once you get it, I want you to take a picture either of the vest, preferably you wearing the vest, and post it on your social media. And I want you to hashtag what's on the screen right now. I'm not going to say it. I'm not going to read off the hashtag so that those of you who are listening to the audio version are going to have to come to YouTube and check it out. But because I want you to see what the vest looks like. But anyways, if you hashtag if you hashtag that while posting a picture of wearing this vest, then I'm going to enter you into a chance to win $1,600 worth of instruction from me. What I think a good use of that would be a pretty much, I would say, maybe a 6-hour lesson in person in one of the areas that I go to, or depending on my travel schedule, we can work out a time where I can come to you. That's dependent though. And then which leaves you $400 left, and that's enough to get you 4 hours of video lessons as a good follow-up. So I would recommend you doing it that way, but you're more than welcome to do it all in one day. If I'm going to be at an area for multiple days and you want to split it up like 2 4-hour sessions, however you want to do it, you can do it that way. You can do 2-hour sessions once a year, for the next few years until you spend $1,600. But anyways, the purpose is that you get $1,600 worth of lessons for free if you win this little social media contest by purchasing the vest and putting a picture up. The thing about that, though, is I recognize a lot of you guys don't have social media. So if you don't have social media, then do the exact same thing and just email me a picture of you wearing it. I really want to see people wearing this vest because it looks so cool. So just email it to me at podcast@dradulovich.com. Oh, hell yeah, Matt. We already got somebody ordered one. Nate, A Ton of Motion says, looks like a Rorschach, however you say that, Rorschach test. And Nate Wiener says, he says, I pronounced your last name wrong. Sorry, Nate. He says, I typically fail tests. Oh, man, that's funny. Yes, although they are fractals, mathematically based fractals in the design. It's very cool. And run the northeastern region. That's a good question. I can. Why don't I text BAREPELT right now to see if they'll be at that shoot, and if they will, then I will. I'll let you guys know. Okay, so I'm going to, I think, transition off of this page so you guys can see me again, even though I know you'd probably rather look at a black screen than my face. But we're gonna go back. So. Okay. Again, if you want to get that vest, you can get it at barepelt.com. A little BAREPELT thing. Okay, let's do a voice memo. Hey guys, oh my gosh, I don't know how to work my phone. I'm currently on a live podcast right now, and everybody wants to know if you will be at the Northeastern Regional at M&M. And it's spelled M&M as in the rapper. Oh, and it's still going. I'm really good with technology, guys. Okay, so if and when they get back to me before the end of this podcast, I will let y'all know what their answer is. Okay, so let's see. What's the next thing we have on the list? We got the vest. Oh, that's the other thing. I'm going to put in the comments of the chat the direct link to go buy the vest if you want it. Rorschach. Okay, that's what I thought. Thanks, Hank. Um, anyways, the next thing that we have on is another thing I'm very excited about. Taken long enough, but I don't have pictures of this really because I can't really show pictures of it because it's not on the computer. But the Journey podcast mobile app has been released, kind of in a beta version right now, but it's not yet on the Apple Store. I have to go through an insane amount of things to get this thing published on the Apple Store, and it is taking a long time. But it is published on the Google Play Store. So what I'm gonna do is post a link to the mobile app in chat. And for those of you that have an Android, if you could do me a favor and download the app, play around with it, test it out, see what doesn't work, tell me what you don't like, tell me what you like, and just play around with it right now. And I'm gonna very graciously use you guys to make it better. This is like, phase one of the app. There are a bunch of different things I'm going to eventually be adding into it, but for now, that's what we got. But that would be great if you guys could do that. So just let me know if you have any problems, ideas, suggestions, etc. And the link is in the chat. The second link in the chat is the mobile app, and the first link in the chat is the BAREPELT. And audio lagging and video lagging getting worse. Mine's showing it the same. Although it might just be your Wi-Fi or something. But I can tell when the audio and video is synced up by looking at the screen. I'll just do one more test. It is a little bit late. Could just be because my camera's getting hot. I don't know. Technology does not like me. Oh well. So, now that we have that, the last thing on the agenda to talk about before we get into everything. Okay, maybe it is out. I'll just double check this real quick. I have multiple people telling me. Sorry for those of you that I'm blowing your eardrums out on for that. Okay, I think it's better. Okay, thank you guys. Thank you guys for that. But anyways, okay, so let me know. I'll keep watching the comments to check if it does start to lag, and if it does, just let me know. Anyways, so I'm very excited for my next podcast episode guest. Yes, Ron, I do need a network TV guy. But anyways, I'm very excited for my next guest. And I want you guys to guess who it will be. So I can tell you it's going to be a very good episode. But it's going to be very easy to guess. Let's just see what happens. First person that guesses it. Oh, that would be very cool, Ron. But no, it's not Huberman. And yes, it is going to be Wendell Cherry. So I've been talking to him, and we are going to schedule something soon. I was going to try to get him to. My plan actually was to have a recorded episode to release today with him, but I'm kind of a stickler on having episodes with guests where I do not like the audio to sound like it's a phone call. So I want to make it. I'm not going to be able to go to Georgia to record it with him, so I'm taking a little bit extra time so that I can get the audio right. So that way, when you guys listen to the episode, it really does let you feel like you're right there in the room with us, because that's going to be important for me to create that experience, because it is a very awesome guest to have, especially with the relationship that I have with him and our history, and having Wendell just won the U.S. Open. It's going to be a really, really cool episode. So with that being said, I'd like you guys to start to think about some things you'd like me to ask him. If you have any personal questions for Wendell, if you have any questions for Wendell and myself, if you have any questions for Wendell about me, just think of but don't use them as blackmail, please. But just start thinking about them, and then when you come up with them, send an email to podcast@dradulovich.com and put the subject in the email as questions for Wendell, and then just type them in, and I will try to get to as many as I can. I do not care how long this episode is going to be. If it is a 10-hour long recording, it'll be a 10-hour long recording, and I'll release it in multiple series. So I'll try to get everybody's questions in, because why not? Trevor just said, dang, got caught up in doing design work on a new BAREPELT vest and missed the first half hour. Did I miss anything? No, actually, Trevor, you're coming in at the perfect time, because we're kind of now just getting started. Okay. So I guess if anybody has, I'm going to open it up for questions, just to initiate some questions. And then while you guys are thinking of or typing out questions, I'm going to read you what the order of today's stuff is. So we are going to we went through the update and the vests and the mobile app. We talked about Wendell being the next guest. Then we're going to get into a self-analysis of my own performance at the U.S. Open. And I'm going to be using the self-analysis sheets that I'm going to be sharing the screen for, so you guys can see my screen. I'm going to go through and show you guys a lot of analyses. Then I'm going to run through an assessment of those analysis sheets. So basically, the analysis sheets, bleh, I need some water. They're like an objective tool to help present to you information that's unbiased. But that's just the analysis sheets are not like the end of the road when it comes to looking for a way to improve. They're kind of like the beginning of the road. So I'm going to walk through a self-assessment on my own analysis sheets. And don't worry, I already filled them out for you guys, and I have it all preloaded to go through, so don't have to waste time on that. But then after that, I'm going to go through and basically, take the information that we got from the self-analysis sheets and from my assessment of my own performance, and then use that information to pull back up my plan of the for my current year that I set in the beginning of the year of the podcast while we were working on learning how to accomplish goals. And I'm going to look at how I need to restructure that plan. Do I need to change anything? Do I need to remove or add anything? And basically, I'm going to talk to you about all that kind of stuff, how you make those decisions and everything like that. So I will preface all of that by saying that at any point in me going through all of this information, please feel free to ask any questions that you have. And I took the liberty of trying to come up with some filters for you guys, in terms of how you should think about questions to come up with. So basically, as I'm going through the analysis of this, honestly, interject at any point. I'm not going to. I may have little areas periodically where I'm like, okay, now we're going to open up for questions, but interject at any point. And the filter questions I have for you are basically if you want to understand my thought process behind any specific decision that I'm either talking about, that I made in the round, talking about that I made after the round, but in between time for the next one, or decisions that I'm making right now as I analyze this information. Ask me to explain that. If you notice something that I bring up that you don't know how to do and you want me to expound upon, interject and ask me about that. So like if I have a note in there, or if I bring something up, and you're just like, that sounds really interesting and I need to learn how to do that, how do I do that? Go ahead and ask me. If you notice something that is similar in how you experience certain situations and you need information on, go ahead and ask me. I'm going to be going through some of my comments, and there's a lot of like summary or you'll see in the comments I kind of like talk about how I felt and what I was experiencing through the day. And if something clicks for you and kind of like almost feels like deja vu, then say that and let me see if I can help you. And then lastly, if you want any clarification on why a specific thing that I focus on is important, I'm kind of predicting that there may be some things that I talk about or that I highlight heavily in my analyses that kind of seem like they're unimportant, or that you may not understand why I'm doing that. And so if you don't, then again, ask. So now that I went through all that, let me read your comments real quick. Austin said, David, did you get a haircut? No, I did not. I just am wearing a different hat. And Hank says, David, are you getting any of my messages or the 15-minute calls you've scheduled? I've been trying to get a hold of you. No, that's weird. My 15-minute phone call thing broke. It's a way to like schedule a free phone call with me, and it somehow got synced with my teaching calendars and did a bunch of weird stuff. And so every time I think I try and fix it, it doesn't get fixed. So I promise you that after this is over, even if you're asleep, I will send you a message. In fact, I'll do this right now. Watch. At 11 o'clock p.m., remind me to send a message to Hank. Send a message to Hank. Okay, so, sorry. So Lily says, David, where can we get these self-analysis sheets? So the best place to get them, the only place to get them, is, I'm trying to find out where my little chat is for YouTube. You go to this website, www.dradulovich.com/shoot, and I put that in the comments. So if any of you guys are wanting to do this in the future, then you can go to that website, and it is all right there. That was broken for about 2 weeks that I did not realize, and when people were submitting their self-analysis sheets, there was a period of time where they were not getting them, but I figured out why, and I corrected the automated flow for that. So now it is working again as of a couple days ago, and you should get them. And I tested it out, so it works. I did them myself, and I got them back, so it works. Basically, when you run through the self-analysis sheet, literally, I think it has done now almost 30,000. This automated flow that I have has run almost 30,000 times. So there has been almost 30,000 submissions to the shoot analysis sheet, which is insane. But across that time frame, the average, I just looked, the average run rate is like 2 minutes and 20 seconds or something like that. So when you click submit, in 2 minutes and 20-second average after you click submit, you will get an email that has the results. And it is very cool, and we're going to go through it today and look at it for my own performance. Okay, that link doesn't work, probably because it should work. I mean, you might not be able to click it. Let's do this. HTTP. My dog is going crazy. There we go. That link should work. Um, the okay. Let me catch up on any other questions. Is there a way to get a hold of the analysis sheet without doing it through your website? Unfortunately, there is not, because the way that it works is it runs an insane program that takes all of the information that you submit in the analysis sheet, runs it through a bunch of ridiculous formulas to figure out all these runs it through all these data analytics to give you all this information, and it's not possible to do it on your own. Basically, the purpose of the student analysis sheet is to ask you. The purpose of the survey for the student analysis sheet is to ask you very straightforward questions that have an objective filter to them in terms of your answer, because it's defined, and it takes you through all the points of your game, asks you these questions, asks you to rank them based off of a definition, not just random, subjective 1 to 10, but rather a defined scale of performance, has you rank them, and then it takes you through all the different categories, and then once you get to the end and you click submit, it submits that form through this thing that plugs it into an Excel sheet that I did with a bunch of formulas to find out a bunch of other information. So unfortunately, it's not possible, and you have to use the website. Yeah, sorry, Nate. I was reading fast, and I was like object permanence, where I wasn't thinking about who the name was. I was reading it, and and it happened late. Um, uh, so 34 HTS says, I may have already asked this question for someone who's starting at square one. Do you still recommend the shoot analysis sheet? Yeah, great question. And I recommend anybody that is at any level of the game do this, because it gives you the option on every single thing to answer not applicable if it's something you haven't learned yet or don't do as part of your game yet. But at the very least, what it does is it shows you the different topics of things that you need to potentially look at learning about. Oh, that's right, Justin. Sorry. Lily says, I never sent you my question from 2 weeks ago. I'll send it tomorrow, but it's a serious, viable question. Okay, cool. Yeah, send it. Sorry. Okay. My dog is on my lap, begging me to feed her. So I am going to take literally a 1-minute intermission, and I will be right back. And then we will come in and start the analysis of everything, and that'll give us a good little break for the audio only version. So start thinking about some more questions you may have. Give me 1 minute. I'll be right back. Okay, guys, we are back. Um, Thank you for bearing with me for that short time delay. I have a few questions. Hey, Haas. Haas says, how many different hats does David have? Bring back the blue beanie. Yeah, the one that I got a bunch of crap for. Maybe I'll wear it next time. But I do have a bunch of hats, and Hank wants me to show Bella. She's eating right now, so I'll bring her back on later. And then Brad says the Pila red green low light and red green highlight lenses do they work with the black targets and orange if you're red green deficient? Um, what do you mean by the black targets and orange? Do you mean like the black and orange targets, or do you mean the two different targets independently? I don't know if you have in Australia. I don't know if you have the half and half targets, and if that's what you're talking about. But I can tell you that the I really like the red green lenses from Pila. They have a slight unique version of polarization in them, and the way that it works allows you, I think it separates color spectrum, so you can see colors that are closer together more differently. If you have color blindness, you'll know what I mean. If you don't, you probably won't. But the huge benefit to that I have found in shooting the U.S. Open, which was, I would say, 99% black targets in the sky, was that it kind of, not just kind of, it 100% cut the glare off on all of the black targets, so you could see an insane amount of detail on them. It was awesome. And then they work with the orange targets too. What I would say that they are not designed for is like if you're shooting an all orange target in a specific style of lighting where it's kind of like a faded out sky, where kind of like there's cloud cover on the whole sky, not like just independent clouds, but kind of like a faded out sky. I think you probably would know what I mean, where the light is very dissipated, but it's still kind of bright outside, and the sky is kind of like a whitish gray. And if you have orange targets in that background, for me at least, with my color blindness, I have a hard time seeing the orange targets with that lens. But that lens, that's why Pila makes a bunch of different lenses. So when I have specific target presentations with that background, I move to a different lens. But they work really good with orange and any background other than that. For me, it makes the targets look like light bulbs, and they work awesome for black targets. Haas says, serious question this time. Sorry if it was answered. I joined late. What was your experience like with the Super Squad? How would you apply, annotate or otherwise, on your shoot analysis sheet? Not a problem to ask that at all, Haas. I'm actually going to get into that a lot for my shoot analysis sheet. So if you just got in, you probably didn't hear. I'm going to go through my shoot analysis sheets for the U.S. Open. So we'll talk about it. Okay, so why don't we go through and go through the shoot analysis? So let's switch over to the other screen. Okay. Nate said, I missed his question thinking about a fair. I don't know what that is. I'm assuming it's a gun, but I haven't heard of it. If he was wanting to know if I have any opinion on it. I don't know. Okay, so anyways, I have pulled up here 3 different shoot analysis sheets. I went through and I did an analysis for each of the main event rounds, and that's what I'm going to go through today. And then, so that's what we have. Yeah, you can see my mouse. That's what we have here on the left side, and then on the right side is some more information where I'm going to have my notes and stuff that I input on my while I was doing the shoot analysis sheet. So let's kind of just start. We'll start on this right side here and go through the shoot analysis sheet. So this is for day one, the red course of the U.S. Open. I have down here that I arrived on the 29th. The date of this round is the 31st. The reason why that's important for me is because it helps me gauge the length of time that I have prior to the main event. This is a extremely rare occurrence for me where I get to the shoot. I got there at 10 o'clock p.m. on the 29th and only had one day prior to the main event. That is normally not something that I do. Normally, if I was going to be shooting the main event on the 31st, I would have liked to get there on maybe, let's say, the 27th, so I have at least 2 more full days of competition. This is mainly because of the fact that, like, I generally tend not to have as much time as I would like to practice, and so I use the days leading up to the events that I care about as a way to learn myself, which you'll see here on some of the notes that I'm taking. And I kind of learn what I'm doing and what my current strengths and weaknesses are, and I make adjustments as I go from day to day. So that way, by the time I get to the main event, basically I have 3 days so far of competing with a good amount of data behind me to make better decisions. This one I did not have that, and the first day of this round started at 8 in the morning. Amazingly, it only lasted an hour and a half. We were done by 9:30. Again, I like to look at that. Gives me some better information. Current NSCA class, master class, started on station 7. The high score of that course was a 65, and Wendell Cherry, who won HOA, shot a 61 on that course. The way that this worked was all of the there was a massive amount of the guys that are professionals all shooting on one course on the same rotation at the same time. So it was really nice and easy to be able to track and figure out kind of who was positioning themselves well as the week progressed, which I thought was awesome. Sidebar on the Super Squad rotation, I think it's the best thing to happen in our sport in a long time because it allows for a massively higher degree of fairness in terms of weather and lighting and everything. Everybody shoots the same course, same day, same time, and that makes it really, really fair. I think it's good for spectators, which means that it's also good for the industry and for the people paying the professional shooters to shoot, like our sponsors and stuff. It helps to create excitement about the sport, and I love the fact that it re-squads on Sunday, where it re-squads based off of score. So my squad on Sunday was the first squad because I was sitting in 4th place going in, and there were 4 people that you want to follow. You can definitely see who is you can watch the events of the winner unfold as it happens. And my only suggestion to them for the Super Squad rotation is to re-squad every day. I think that's a fantastic thing to do. Re-squad based off of score every day. And then there's a lot of talk about not allowing spectators to bring golf carts out on the course because it creates too much traffic because there's so many people that come out to watch. But I'm of the mindset that I'm a professional athlete in the sport, and my job is to be entertaining if that's what you want me to do. And I think that I should have to deal with I should have to learn to deal with traffic on the course so that it would allow more people to come watch. So that's my opinion on it. Basically, I'm super excited and I love it. It was really kind of like the main reason why I decided to go to the U.S. Open last minute, because I've been so busy. And with what I'm doing in my podcast, trying to talk about planning and everything, I'm trying to take very seriously one of the things that I've found out about myself, which is I'll talk about later in another podcast episode, but essentially trying to learn how to compete with my ADHD, and now starting to learn why there are some tournaments where I can't feel excited about or I don't feel nervous about, which is something that I need to perform well. I just was not feeling up for shooting the U.S. Open. I wasn't getting excited about it, and so I kind of honestly was thinking about not going until I saw that there was going to be a super squad. In that case, I thought that it would help me feel more pressure and be able to focus in that way, and it did. I thought it was awesome. So anyways, there's this information. Let's get into my scorecard analysis. So the way that I did this was I kind of went through in order of the way that I shot the course. I always like to do it. I'm going to do it like that so we can see it better. I always like to do this in order of the course, that in order of the stations that I shoot in the course, because it gives me a little bit better information at just a moment's glance when I look at the shoot analysis sheet, to kind of give me a feel for what was happening as I progressed through the course. And so I started on station 7 the first 2 days, started on station 1 the last day. Saying audio got in and out. Let me see. It did. Gosh dang, I gotta add it again. At least I know how to do this quickly. Okay. Yep, that looks better. Okay, so anyways, yeah, so I do basically what I was saying was I do the shoot analysis sheet in order, so it helps me learn more about the shoot. Now I'm going to do this for the first one. I'm kind of going to explain the purpose of a lot of these things in the shoot analysis sheet on the first thing, but on the next two, I'm not going to go over that again just to save time. But basically, this is a lot more important of a page than just copying your scorecard. If you just copy your scorecard, you're not going to get anything out of it. And the biggest thing that's really the most important thing is the difficulty rating. This is something that is and should be completely subjective. It is a subjectively based number that you put in the difficulty rating of each station, but it's defined by an objective scale. So while you're doing this, if you scroll down to the bottom of the shoot analysis sheet, you'll see down here where it gives you the difficulty grading scale that's defined. A score of 1 difficulty would be to where you should be able to say to yourself when you see the target or the presentation, if it's a VTAS single or a Sporting Clays pair, when you see the presentation, if you think I should hit 100% of these, then that's a 1. If you think I should hit 85% of these, that's a 2. If you think that you should hit 75%, that's a 3. 60% is a 4, and 50% or less is a 5 difficulty. The other thing that's important about this is that like on top of grading yourself on the difficulty of the station, subjectively based off of that objective filter, it kind of helps you to doesn't help you, but it forces you to go back and relive the course station by station, which kind of forces you to learn how to visualize. The way that I like to do this is I do not like to write down difficulty of stations or try to remember difficulty of stations in the middle of the round. I want to shoot my round, focus on the round after the round is over, either later that night or the next day or whenever, doing it all on Monday, what doesn't matter. But at that point, then I go back and I kind of relive the tournament in my head, progressing from station to station, and trying to remember what the para or presentation looked like, and think about how I would have performed on that. and then I do the shoot analysis sheet. That's really, really important because over time it practices your ability to recall information, which then becomes a very valuable skill set uh, in the middle of a round, where when you see a station or a target presentation that kind of flags your recall ability, and it's like, I've seen something like this before, whether it be the target presentation or a specific feeling that you got from looking at those targets. It'll help you remember other times when whatever it was in that scenario was similar, and which will also help you remember what decisions you made, which will also help you avoid making the same bad decision over and over again, in terms of strategy and choice making and stuff like that. I just got a message from BAREPELT, and I will. They said yes, they're going to be vending Thursday through Saturday at the Northeastern Regional, and just so far, like since I texted her, there have been two vests that were purchased. So two of you guys just got entered if you post the hashtag. And Lily, yes, you'll be able to print this out. Anyways, okay, so back to this. Let's go through and of 1, score of 6, total target 6. This is subjective to you. So when I look at the pair that I shot on Station 7, I think I need to be able to, and I should hit all of these 100%. So I grade that as a difficulty of 1. If you're an E-class shooter, you may have graded that station as a difficulty of 5. The other thing to note is that we do not want to grade these targets and the difficulty of this based off of like a generic stance on how hard we think it would be or should be. It's not how many should you hit or how many should you break. It's like it's not how many should somebody be able to break on this pair. It's you personally with your strengths and weaknesses and your skill set and your propensity to favor a certain style of target or whatever it is. How do you feel like you should do on this station? That's where you get to the valuable information on this, because it starts to pull out trends of your shooting that help you learn from. Okay, so I went through here, and basically you can see stations. My first station, I graded difficulty of 1, scored a 6. Second station, 1, 6. My third station, difficulty of 2, I scored a 5 out of 6. Then a 10. Station 10, which was my next station, difficulty of 1. I missed a target there. I should not have. Then my next station was difficulty of 2. I ran it. Kind of gave me an even par on those two back-to-back stations. Basically, I only have one more difficulty of 2 on the rest of the course, and I missed my first pair on that station, so I scored a 4 out of 6, and ended up, you can see here, I shot a 62 out of 66 on this course, and I did not write any pre-round or post-round comments. I can upload a scorecard picture here if I want to, but I did not. No point in showing you guys that. And you can see, right, if we go over here on my shoot analysis sheet, all of this data that I input on in the forum on my website, it gets pulled into this, starting on, you'll see over here, it goes 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Gives me the difficulty that I input, my total score. It gives you a nice little graph right there on the left to kind of give you a quick visual reference, where you can kind of compare, like, 2, if a difficulty of 2 means I should hit 85%, I hit 83 on that station, and then a difficulty of 4, 75, difficulty of 2 here on station number 3, I should have hit 85%, I hit a 67%, so really to me, that was like -1, like I dropped down, and I bogeyed a hole, essentially. Haas says, this scorecard looks a lot more positive and green than the ones I have filled out in the past. Yeah, I've had those days. Okay, so that's really the scorecard analysis. I'm going to get into more of the analysis of this later on. the like I'm going to get to the left side of this page later on. Right now I'm focusing on the right side of the page. So let's go to the next page on here. So this is the category of round maintenance. You can read it here. The first subcategory is called preparation prior to the event. So basically, I'm grading myself on the quality of effort that I put into each of the following categories prior to the event starting, and it could include weeks prior to actually competing. So the first question was, like how much effort did I put into scheduling practice with a specific focus or purpose? I graded myself a 0 on that. All of my round maintenance categories for all three things are going to be all 3 days are going to be exactly the same, because it's grading myself on the whole event and leading up to the event. So I didn't practice at all. I in fact, the comments here I put down, did not plan on going to the event until 1 week prior, was not able to practice at all since late January, gave lessons and had insanely demanding schedule immediate week prior to the US Open, 107 hours of teaching in 6 days, drove straight through from Houston to Little Rock, then Little Rock to Tucson, and slept in the car for 2 nights during my travel. I did not, because I kind of didn't plan on going to Tucson when I left to Houston from Little Rock, which is kind of like 7 hours on the way to Houston, or on the way to Tucson. I didn't bring anything I needed for the U.S. Open, so I made the decision to go to the U.S. Open kind of when I was in Houston. So I had to drive back to Little Rock and then over to Tucson, and it did not work out good. I had to drive straight. I slept in the car 2 nights because I was trying to save time, and I know that for me, the choice to do that is with my ADHD. I drive until I'm tired. When I'm tired, I go to sleep. If I start to get tired and then start to look for a hotel, by the time I check into a hotel and get into the hotel, I've been mentally engaged, and I wake up and then I'm laying in the hotel for 2 hours, and that's 2 hours of not being able to go to sleep, and I could have easily continued to drive. So I just sleep in the car because it allows me to be more efficient in that way. And but that doesn't always get, it's a plus or minus, kind of like a wash. But anyways, focus. I graded myself 50 for my nutrition, hydration, and sleep schedule prior to the tournament, because I wasn't eating breakfast or lunch for the week prior. I was really focused on teaching so much. I had a really busy schedule. The 107 hours obviously isn't teaching, like actual shooting. I can't teach that many hours, in 6 days because it gets dark. But it was basically I think 11 hours a day of shooting instruction, and then like 3 or 4 hours a day or something of video lessons immediately following my shooting instruction. And so it was just really, really hard. And I got focused on that and wasn't preparing and being ready. I 100% was in the right mindset, and I planned an efficient, beneficial travel arrangements. For me, I'm grading that as 100% on, like, when I got there, did I have everything? I guess probably I should not have given myself 100% thinking about how I got there. So maybe the whole thing's over. We're going to reschedule for tomorrow night. Schedule beneficial event rotation times and volume of shooting per day. I gave myself an 80% on this because I really liked my schedule except for Saturday, which I'll get into later, and eliminated and addressed any external influencers causing stress or anxiety. 100% for me. I was really good going into that. The next part, like the execution during the event. Committed to a healthy and optimal sleep schedule, 100%. Healthy nutrition and hydration plan, 80%. Optimal level of socialization for my personality. It's always very hard for me to do this at a tournament because, I have times where every single morning I would be, I have to shoot in 15 minutes, and I'm at my car packing my golf cart up, and it's a 10-minute drive out to the course. And people, will come up and try to have conversations. I keep saying I have to go, and they think they can have the conversation quick because they think I have time to get there, but they don't realize the mental ramping up that's required to be able to do that. And if I'm stuck in conversation, I can't. So, and I'm also empathetic, so I don't want to be rude. So I gave myself a 90 because I had a few instances of that, and I should have done better to avoid. the managed and conserved physical and emotional energy levels. I gave myself a 60%. I'll read that later in my comments. Committed to a healthy amount of nutrition and hydration throughout the round, 90%, and eliminated and avoided any external stress influencers, 100%. I don't really tend to stress that much about anything, so that was always generally 100. So my comments on my execution, so my preparation and management during the round, or during the tournament, I should say. I'll read off for those of you listening on audio. I said that I forgot mid-round snacks and nutrition every day of the main event at the hotel. When I got there, I went shopping, I went to the grocery store, I got everything I wanted, and literally freaking every day I would forget to bring them. And actually, I even forgot to even take them home with me when I left. I was like 6 hours down the road and was like, dang it, I left all that food that I bought in the fridge. It's like out of sight, out of mind for me. Object permanence with ADHD. I should have put sticky notes on the door, and I didn't. So that was a little frustrating because I would have liked to have a little bit of nutrition. And the only thing that they had out there was like candy on every station, and that's horrible. That wasn't that good, but I socialized fairly well. I thought it was good. Like I did very good not to go out to dinner every night. I did my own thing. I was by myself. I was secluded, everything, because I knew I had really low energy levels. There's sometimes when I can be more social due to, being able to prep and prepare and sleep and have good energy going into a match. But because of what I just did for teaching, I literally was so worn out that I needed all the time to myself that I could get to kind of recharge. I drastically overestimated my ability to shoot high volume on Saturday and had events straight through from 8 a.m. to 5:30 p.m. It was so back to back that I basically was 2 to 3 minutes late to every single rotation that I had, and I was not expecting the rotations to last that long. So, when I looked at my schedule, everything looked like I should have time to go back and grab something, but again, because I forgot my nutrition or my snacks and stuff at the hotel, I wasn't able to eat anything or anything from 8 to 5:30, which normally not a big deal, but when you're trying to win a U.S. Open in terms of a high level of performance, that is a big deal. It's very, very hard to be able to do that well, and I was stuck to eating candy throughout the day. Totally my fault. And I did not realize that was going to be as long as my schedule was. I wrote down I seriously felt drained and exhausted afterwards, which led to needing downtime in the hotel to mentally ramp down. And I could not go to sleep until 3 a.m. Saturday night. I literally was laying in bed trying to go to sleep, and I could not. Like my brain kept going, and because I was in like somewhat of focus mode from shooting so much. And I was excited kind of about my round that I had previously shot, and so I just could not go to sleep. And it said, so I wrote down, Sunday morning I woke up feeling exhausted, drained, weak, and sore, a massive lack of mental energy in order to have the ability to focus during the Sunday round. Due to this the Sunday main event felt like an anomaly compared to all the other events and rounds. So I'll get into that later. I'm not going to get it because I have notes on that later on. But do we have any questions so far? Again, I'm only going to kind of do this on the first one. Oh, cool. Con Or, thank you for subscribing. I'm guessing to YouTube. Cool, that was cool. Well, thank you. Appreciate that, my friend. Yeah, I do need a shooter caddy. Oh gosh. Okay, so let's move on. We're going to get into the physical and emotional mechanics in the research phase. So this is where we grade ourselves on the quality of effort that we put into being aware of the following things. You're not grading yourself here on if you found the correct information. The research phase of the physical and emotional mechanics is only about grading how much effort you put into trying to find the information. So in terms of like grading myself on researching the target characteristics like size, color, etc. 100%. That's second nature. Target lines, both two-dimensional and three-dimensional. Gave myself a 90% emotional response to target, like assessing if it makes me feel anxious or confident or amped or calm, etc. I gave myself an 80%. This is only on the first round, so this is on Friday. We got another subscriber. Cool. X13 Mako Jack. Thank you for subscribing, my friend. So my comments from my research phase, I said I did not have the ability to use a hyper-focus level of analysis on Friday, but I played it perfectly for what I had available to me that day. Due to this, I backed off of going hard on reading target lines and I shot more intuitively. So this is a conscious decision that I decided to make in terms of how I was going to strategically play this round. I did not feel like I had a lot of energy or ability to focus that well, so I didn't want to try, because if I do that, I either, number one, drain the gas too fast and end up out of gas in the middle of the round, or I end up feeling distracted trying to think about trying to focus, if that makes sense, and that doesn't work for me. I also did not perfectly test hold points. Again, kind of a conscious choice. I didn't want to spend the time to go through the test to do all that, because I knew I could get really close intuitively, and I needed to have this round be low energy input. That led, so my lack of effort in those things by conscious choice led me to missing one target where I misread the line as a stalling out target, but it was under power from the wind. So what happened was, because I wasn't putting a huge amount of effort into reading lines, I didn't notice that as other people were shooting, the line of the bird was changing due to the wind. There's a lot of wind in Arizona. And this was like a kind of if you can see my hand right now, it was like a bird that kind of came up and then stalled like this. And so the dome of the bird was right here, and the wind was coming and hitting the dome. And what was happening, where if I was paying more attention, I would have seen that when the wind picks up, it pushes it flat, and it doesn't have a stall, it doesn't hang and then fall. It just kind of has a more of an arc and maintains a lot of speed. So because I kind of looked at it, assessed it, made a mental note of like, okay, this is what it should be. That's what I was setting up for and planning for every time, and I ended up missing one because of that. That would have not happened had I not been doing that. But always when I make a choice to approach a round like this, I'm assessing like, okay, so far we know that today, in this day, my choice to approach the round that way cost me one target so far. Before I start the round, if I change my mind in the middle of the round, I'm making the decision of, if I put more effort into doing this, I may not make that mistake. I may not have missed that bird, but it may have caught up to me worse somewhere else in the round and cost me more than the amount that doing it this way cost me. So it's a balancing act, and this is why as you progress and get better and start to learn more about yourself, the game becomes really like chess, where you're playing strategy and you're making choices that you don't know how they will go, but you hope that it all works out. And so that's basically how I felt. I said I also lost track of my emotional response, so my emotional awareness, on station 3. And I summarized by saying, like, I got too excited and overconfident on the pair, and I wanted to shoot aggressively when I should not have. I went lost pair on the first pair of the station, and it was an easily runnable station for me if done correctly. So this was not where I misread the lines. What happened was I kind of did not have, what I noticed at this station was I saw the pair, and it was a report pair of I believe it was a chandelle from the right, an orange chandelle from the right, going up at about 55 degrees, quartering away kind of, and then a really interesting technical line of a tower coming from the top left. There was a lot of transition there, and the way that the tower looked was that it had a curling line that curled off pretty quickly. And I love to shoot fast, and it's a very hard thing to do, But when I'm rolling on all cylinders, I am easily able to do that. And I made the assessment looking at the pair that I want to take the chandelle on the way up because it's a straight line. It's a harder mechanical move, but if I make a good move and I see it well and I trust myself, it becomes an easier shot. It's harder mechanically to do, or it's easier mechanically, but harder emotionally to do that. You have to have good control of your physical and emotional state to make a shot like that because it's scary. But mechanically, it's easier because it's a straight line. So I made the assessment of I want to take the chandelle on the way up like that, and then which gives me more movement for my transition to the second bird to where I can't even see the tower way up in the left corner of that space after I shoot the first bird. And I thought that I would have the speed and quickness and efficiency to be able to transition to the second bird and shoot the tower before it curled, which looking back on it, I have no idea how I so poorly overestimated my abilities, but I do not know what I was thinking. It was a horrendous choice. And I was just feeling it. But so I did it that way, and I immediately recognized, like, that was horrendous. I didn't have any chance of that happening. How did I possibly think that was going to work? And that realization kind of gave me this awareness of the fact that I was not very emotionally, visually, and physically self-aware of myself in that moment because I did not make the assessment that, hey, not possible right now, don't even try. I thought, got it, let's go, hold my beer type thing. And so that I laughed when I missed the pair. I was like, you idiot. And I took a step back, reassessed, made a new plan, and ran the station out. But a pair that I should easily be able to run if I just didn't make it so much harder for myself. So that's why I gave myself the 80% in the emotional response to targets and the 90% in reading the target lines. The planning phase, I should grade myself on the quality of effort that I put into incorporating the following things into each plan for the target presentation. Does not include whether or not your plan worked. We are only grading ourselves here on how much of the information below we actually incorporated into the plan, regardless of its success or accuracy, because we do that later. So basically, how much effort was I putting into planning a breakpoint? Break points 90%, hold points I gave myself 50%, start time gave myself 90%. These are variables that I like to use. If you're a student of mine, you'll know what every single one of these are. If you're not, you may be able to understand most of it or figure it out. My posture set point for both targets, I gave myself a 90%. My zero tension point, I gave myself 100%. Draw length 80%. Hand speed 90%. Rotational speed 100. Change in posture speed 100. Emotional response, like planning an emotional response, and I have in parentheses here, think, how does the target make me feel compared to how I need to feel? So if we're using self-awareness to assess, okay, what's my intuitive response to this bird? I'm going to give myself an 80%. And then the movement of my body and gun to the second target, I gave myself an 80%. My comments on planning were that I purposefully made the choice to go light on planning due to lack of ability to focus deeply, and made the strategic choice that trying to force a high level of analysis would drain energy levels too much, and the best net positive approach was to run at around 75% effort. And I was happy with the decision. I think going over it, doing that again, I would have done it the exact same way. I don't know if I would. I mean, I would have liked to have a higher level of awareness and some other things that I talk about later in here, but I'm happy with my approach. I have a few questions here. So Aldo says, as a D class, if I rate a station of 5 difficulty and end up hitting 5 or 6, does the algorithm put more weight on my subjective reading of the station or my performance? So that's a good question. The algorithm basically doesn't. The algorithm does not put. Actually, it does do it station by station, but it kind of it you don't have to think of it that way because it doesn't compare it in a way where those two things are combined. When you give it a specific difficulty, it gives you a score that you should shoot based off of how you perceive the difficulty, and then it tells you what your score was, and then it tells you your best possible score and some other things. But it doesn't say like, oh, you gave a difficulty of 5, so you should have hit a 3, but you hit a 5 out of 6. So that's going to give you a certain amount of percent of extra effort. It doesn't work that way, that I can remember. It's been a long time since I wrote the formula, so I'm not really sure. The Autonomotion said, were there any concerns with or attention given to the new 20-second rule? Yes, there was, and I will talk about that. The Haas says, how often do you rate stations higher than a 5? I don't know. For me, I don't know if I've had a 5 since I had the shoot analysis sheet. But that doesn't mean that anybody else should not. If we had the PSCA still, there would be stands that I have 5s. But I don't rate anything higher than a 5 because 5 to me means I should hit 50% or less. And then Hank says, I had to hop out for a few. Did you show Bella yet? No, not yet. I'm trying not to let her in because I'll get distracted and this part's hard. Okay, so next phase of this part that I'm on is the execution phase. And basically now we're asking, how well did what we planned actually happen? Like, did we execute what our plan was? And I give myself a 70% on my execution. So basically, my comment was that I felt like I had a lot of tension and anxiety during the round and did not notice how much that was influencing my ability to execute my transitional movements to the second target. I should have put more emphasis on physical relaxation between pairs to allow for better execution. The problem with this was that what this really boils down to was that, do I know how to do this if I feel it? Yes, 100%. My problem was that I did not notice that I was feeling this way until a couple stations into the round. Like, it took me missing that pair on that one station to realize, like, whoa, I am not paying attention to myself. And if I continue to not pay attention to myself, I'm going to keep making mistakes like this. But because of that, I was not realizing how my planning was really good. I felt like it wasn't the best planning I've ever done, and it wasn't the hardest I ever worked. I made the choice to put 75% effort into my planning, and I felt like I hit that on the mark. I did exactly how I wanted to do my planning to conserve energy because of my low energy levels. And so I felt like that I really liked how I played that game, but I should have put more emphasis on awareness, presence. And so that was a lesson learned for me, which is that when I decide to go light in effort, don't remove any effort in awareness and assessment of yourself, because it can lead to things happening that you're not paying attention to. And this gets into the difference between introceptive and extraceptive awareness. And if you're giving light effort on your routine, where my routine is heavily based in feeling, so like my planning is to get all those points here, like start time, posture, tension, draw length, hand speed, break point, hold point. I find all those things by testing them out. And the way I test them out is I have to have an introceptive level, introceptive state of awareness. So as I'm testing spots, I'm assessing how my body feels. And I say, that move feels good. That move doesn't feel good. And then that's how I make my plan. Well, when I go light on my planning, I'm not doing that as much. And so therefore, I'm not running a routine that keeps me introceptively aware of myself. And so it was much easier for me to be paying attention to things outside of my body. And so I just never picked up on how much tension and anxiety I was carrying and how much that was influencing my ability to execute my plan, because I was making plans based off of theoretical evidence and generic ideas as opposed to real, actual, physically felt, rehearsed evidence. So great lesson for me on that one, but that's where that all comes together. So, okay. Oh yeah, no, never mind. Justin says, as someone who gets mentally drained easily while shooting, what do you do to decrease this? A big portion of what I'm talking about right now is exactly the answer to that question, where, I get mentally drained as well when I'm shooting. And so I have to have a high level of energy and focus available to me if I want to give it everything that I have for a round. And if I feel like I don't have that available to me, then I make the conscious decision to back off on that, because this is where I think it gets interesting when we talk about sports psychology, where a lot of sports psychology tells you to at all times do the same thing on repeat over and over and over again. Well, the problem that I've found is that there are just times for me when if I put that much effort into things, it hurts me more than it helps me. And so at that point in time, you need to be able to say, okay, this, if I continue down this road, I'm going to end up worse than if I abandon the car in the middle of the road. And so that's the decision I make. Now, I'm going to give a caveat with that in saying that in order to know how to do that and when to make that decision, you have to have one of two things. Either a tremendous amount of experience doing the same thing all the time, regardless of how your body feels, and giving in having evidence for yourself to say, like, for sure, if I do this, it's going to lead to this bad result that I want to try to avoid, so I'm going to change. Or you have to not care that if you think that you need to change your routine or the effort that you're putting in, and if it goes bad, it doesn't bother you. One of those two things needs to happen, because I recommend against people early in the game always changing their routines and their pre-shot routines and stuff like that, because then you never learn how to actually truly do one. So it is important to go through the learning stage of consistency in effort and routine with inconsistency in the way that lets you feel in terms of a result, because you learn the skill set of being able to get into the routine and do it when you need to. But at the same time, you're building evidence for, oh, this is how I feel when I do everything right, but it doesn't work, because sometimes that's what happens. Okay, so the next part is my visual mechanics for the shoot analysis sheet. And I have here, so it goes into the research, planning, and execution phases again. Again, we're grading ourselves on the quality of effort that we put into these three phases, not on the result of them. So I could have horrendous plans, but if I put a huge amount of effort and I felt confident in my plan, then I could have a 10 out of 10 as an average in my plan, but a 0 on my execution. That's how that works. So it's important to separate it that way, because if you don't, then you get lost in what you really should focus on. If you do it correctly here, then you like, let's say, for example, my research was like averaging a 5. My planning was averaging a 9, and my execution was averaging a 3. Then what I would say is that I'm not doing good research, but I'm using all the research I have, and I'm putting together a plan with all the evidence that I have, but it's a bad plan. If it's the other way around, and let's say that my research is high, my planning is low, and my execution is high, then and I executed it well, then that basically tells you the complete opposite. Lily says, some of what you are talking about and explaining is part of my questions for you. Awesome. Happy I can help out with that. All right, so visual mechanics research phase. The first one is the location and depth of my focal points for the targets. For both targets, I give myself a 90% on the first round. Number 2, the amount of time it takes to acquire hard focus on each target, 90%. Basically, I'm researching where is a good spot to put my eyes, 90%. How long does it take me to acquire hard focus? I would use the word smooth pursuit, ocular movement, 90% or 9 out of 10. How the emotional and physical state that I'm in influence my vision on both targets. So using emotional and physical self-awareness to assess how that influences your vision. And if you don't know what I'm talking about by that, I talk a lot about that in season 1, episode 3. Gave myself a 7 out of 10. Researching and like utilizing breathing techniques to keep a high oxygen level to help my vision. Gave myself 100%. I always do that. I'm very good at that. And then what is the highest level of detail that I can see on the bird? Basically, I'm researching like how good can I possibly see this bird? That's an interesting one because there's not just like a static level of detail that you always see on targets. Literally, it can change if a cloud goes over you in the middle of a station. The day influences, like if it's a day where you haven't eaten well or you didn't sleep good, or if you use a CPAP machine and the air was going into your eyes overnight and you dried your eyes out, that's going to hugely influence how good you can see. And if you're stuck on trying to see detail that you are not physically able to see at that moment, then it's going to freak you out. So you need to know what the max amount is that you have available to you right then, right there, at those targets in that situation at that time. And you need to assess that so that way you're comfortable as, if you have 6 out of 10 level of detail and that's the max you can see, then you know that you don't have to keep trying to see more and it won't freak you out. Give myself 100%. I went on a little rant there, but that's important to know. Okay, so the planning phase. This is, again, the quality of effort that I put into these things. The first one is, did I come to a conclusion for every one of the categories in the research phase above? 100%. I always do work my eyes. I tried to work my eyes really well. Did I plan where my eyes need to go to in location, peripheral awareness, and depth of focus to pick up on the second target? 9 out of 10. Did I plan where I took into consideration my emotional response to the target and I planned accordingly? 9 out of 10. My comments on my planning was that I was purposely light on planning. So those are normally all 10s for me, but I wanted to back off a little bit. Okay, so execution phase, which is basically now how well did I execute everything in my plan, regardless of how well it worked. So it's interesting to note, we need to be able to say, like, maybe the plan didn't work, but I executed it perfectly. Now we know I don't have a problem with execution, I have a problem with planning. Or you could say I executed it horrendously, but I hit everything. Then we have a very interesting situation. Let's see. Okay, so comments for this were that I had a huge miss on ocular movement during transition from breakpoint 1 to focal point 2. So after I shoot the first bird and then I have to go to my focal point for the second bird, I was not doing that well at all. I had high levels of tension impeding my ability of my eyes to move fluidly and calmly, and I was just able to get away with it due to the style of course being lots of fast straight line crossers, which play into my strength of ripping shots. So I got lucky this day that I really wasn't as prepared is bad. I was not as aware as I should have been. And I was not paying attention and listening to myself as much as I should have, but I got very lucky that the style of course was such that they were all targets that played to my advantage, where I know how to shoot them really, really well. And so I really feel like had I shot the blue course on this day, it would have been much worse. I think instead of a 60 on that course, I would have shot a 55 possibly. Not saying that one course is harder than the other, but the style of targets allowed me to do different things. Okay, so my visual acuity, I can rip through these parts. Like my awareness, was I fully aware whether or not I saw the amount of detail on the target that I had planned to be able to see? 100%. The management of that, basically if I noticed that it wasn't what I planned to be able to see, did I make an adjustment to that? 100%. And did my adjustment work if I needed one? 100%. No comments. Relaxation prior to the shot. I have a little thing here. If you're listening to the audio only, it says each one of these 3 categories for relaxation prior to the shot are different. So grade yourself on the percentage of how often throughout the round you feel like you could relate to each of the following statements. The first one is my awareness of relaxation. It says we're only grading your level of awareness of your relaxation in this statement. So how well do I relate to the fact that, or the statement of, I was fully aware of whether or not my emotional and physical state, both during and immediately after each shot, was exactly how I had planned it to be. I gave myself an 80%, 8 out of 10. So basically it means like 2, maybe 3 stations during this round I was unaware. You can break that down into actually specific pairs, but really I felt like it was soon after I started. I felt like I was a few stations in, and then I kind of realized it. And so that's where I kind of went back and forth on that knife edge there. But I said, after 4th station, station 10, I became more physically self-aware of this and corrected pretty effectively. So yeah, there you go. I didn't read that comment before I said that, so I should have said 4 stations. Maybe that means I should have given myself a 70%. Okay, my management of my relaxation. So how well do I relate to this statement? Every time I was aware that my emotional and physical state during and after each shot was not what I had planned it to be, I tried to correct for that the next target presentation. I gave myself a 90%. And my comments on this were that I was much more extraceptive this day than usual, so I did not have a high level of intraceptive self-awareness. If you need to know the difference between extraceptive and interoceptive, then I talk about that also on season 1 episode, or series 1 episode 3, the one earlier on in this episode that I said was the most important. My comments on my management. Oh yeah, I already read that. So I said I was more extraceptive than usual, did not have a high level of intraceptive self-awareness to truly know this level of tension that I actually had, but for what I was aware of, I handled it well. And if you remember what I said just a few minutes ago when I talked about why my level of intraceptive self-awareness was low, it was because of the decision that I made in order to change the effort that I was putting into my planning, which a side effect of that I never really thought of was that because I wasn't being intraceptive and testing out a good plan and feeling my body to make choices on what I was doing, it led me to not basically practicing that, and I kind of got away from that naturally and intuitively. So it's like mindfulness. You need to practice mindfulness, and the further you get away from it, the harder it is to get back, type of thing. Effectiveness on management. How much do I relate to this statement? Every time I noticed my emotional and physical state was not how I had planned and tried to correct for it the next pair, it worked perfectly. I gave myself 100%, and I commented always. That is the easiest one for me to be able to do. Oh, good night, Justin. Okay, so I'll offer it up to any questions anybody may have right now. And so if you remember the little filter questions that I have, I'm going to read them off for you again. If you want to understand my thought process behind any specific decision, that'd be a good filter question. Then another one is, if you notice something I bring up that you don't know how to do and want me to explain. Another one would be if you notice something that is similar in how you experience certain situations and need more or want more information on it. Another one would be if you want clarification on why a specific thing that I focus on is important, or any other questions that you may have. But any of those, feel free to interject and ask. And I have a feeling that this is a little bit different than, a lot of people tend to analyze rounds by assessing specific targets. Like, oh, I had a problem with these type of targets. If I could tell you how many times at the beginning of a lesson when I ask the student, what do you need to work on? Their answers are always, well, I would really like to learn, a chandelle, and I'm struggling with quartering birds right now. But if you notice here, my misses for specific targets are not because I don't know how to shoot a chandelle, it's all about some other stuff when it gets into a tournament. What can happen in a reverse sense is that if we're not aware of ourselves in this way, and this is building on everything I talked about in series 2, which was like that whole journey of self-awareness that I did with Curtis Dunbar. If we're not aware of our body in a match and we're making choices that are bad, but we don't realize that they're bad because we're not paying attention to ourselves, then what can happen is we can start to have a trend of missing birds. And then in that trend, it creates it solidifies a problem to where we start to believe that there is a problem, and it creates a problem. So basically, the problem of not listening to yourself and having a reason why you are unable to hit a specific type of target, not because of the target, creates a belief in yourself that you think that it's the target. And then when you pull it into practice and you try to practice that bird, it becomes hard because you are afraid of it, so to speak. It's a very simple sense, but that's something that can happen in reverse sense, where most people think that it has to do with, if I don't practice a certain bird, I don't get confident on it, and then I go to a match and I don't shoot it well. Both things can happen. All right, going on to my pre-shot routine. Again, kind of an awareness, management, and effectiveness process. So the first one is, how much do I relate to this statement? I was fully aware of whether or not I was attempting to use a pre-shot routine before I attempted to shoot each target presentation 100%. My comments were, I had a fairly consistent pre-shot routine for this round. My main focus was being able to feel what the execution of the movement I was trying to make would feel like for each pair prior to calling for it. Periodically, I would insert physical decompression if required, it's like releasing tension, but I was not running any visualization or anything else due to the use of too much and trying to conserve energy. And I would say that that comment there pertains more to everything after station 4. That's when I noticed I was not feeling things, so then I put an emphasis on trying to feel that. The next one is my management. So how much do I relate to this statement? Every time I was aware that I was not using a pre-shot routine and felt like I needed to, I tried to correct for that the next target presentation, 100%. Then my effectiveness of my pre-shot routine. Every time I noticed I was not using a pre-shot routine and felt like I needed to, I was successful in doing it for the next pair, and I felt like it made a difference, 100%. Kind of nothing really to look at there for me. Go to the next thing here. I have some notes on these categories, but I think I'll address them in the next half of this. Okay. Let's see. So the post-shot routine, same process. How much do I relate to these three statements? I was fully aware of whether or not I was attempting to use a post-shot routine after I attempted to shoot each target presentation 100 for my management of that, and 90% for the effectiveness. My comments were this. Station 9 had a 5 out of 6. My scorecard went dead loss, dead pair, dead pair. My comment was that I immediately took a step back to analyze the problem, and I corrected it. Obviously, the scorecard showed that. Station 10, I got a 5 out of 6. I went dead pair, dead loss, dead pair. And I remember this so vividly, what happened. I said I noticed the second bird felt weird on the first pair, and it also broke weird. I did not analyze that. I let it. It felt weird. I recognized it the second that I pulled the trigger, and it broke strangely. And I was like, that was not right. It felt perfect, and it did not break like it was perfect. There's something weird here, and I made the stupid decision of thinking, it'll be okay, and then I shot the next pair and I missed it on that pair. And that was the pair where I was talking about that I misread the bird, where I basically thought that it was stalling, and it wasn't. So I was making a move where I was like coming to a slow stalling out movement, and I'd pull the trigger as it got to the apex, and basically what happened was I hit the shot with the back part of my pattern on the first pair, and that's why it felt and looked weird. It literally got split in half, and it was a shot that I was fully expecting to just blow up, and I just was like, oh, well, it's not that complicated, I'll just do it again, and so that's why I took a point off of myself. And then station 3, We got a 4 out of 6, went lost pair, dead pair, dead pair. Immediately took a step back to analyze the problem and corrected. So I felt like I did pretty good. Not perfect, but pretty good on that. So the next category, and the last category, which is presence. And I'll just say the time here, and I'll read these off. But it says, I was always aware of everything listed below throughout my whole round and noticed when specific things would change. I'm not going to go through the time to read everything down there below because we'll eventually talk about it. Give myself a 90% on my awareness and 100% or 10 out of 10 on my management and 100% on my effectiveness. So the statement for my management of is each time I was aware of a change in any of the things listed in the presence of self-definition, I tried to assess and identify what that change was and make adjustments to my round strategy and plan making accordingly. So 100%, I don't know if I always give myself 100% on that because that's just a dumb thing not to do. If you notice something is wrong and you say, like I don't need to. I mean, I'm saying that right after I just explained that I noticed the target a shot was wrong and I didn't change it. But I mean, like, if there's something in that you feel about yourself, not a shot, but about yourself, is like that I need to change something and you decide not to, that's more of laziness than it is a lack of ability or knowledge. And then effectiveness is each time I made an adjustment to my round strategy and plan making due to a change in my presence of self, it resulted in a sustained or improved level of shooting. 100%. So that's important to note because, like, if your effectiveness is low but the other two are high, then what that's telling you is that you're doing a great job of being aware of your body. You are doing a great job in terms of making an effort to influence it in a way that you are hoping for it to be better in terms of the result, but you're not making good choices on what to change or how to change it. So if that was the case, and let's say like if you were a student or something, I would be talking to you right now about what were you assessing and what were your decisions to do to influence how that was affecting your shooting. And because we need to see if I can show you that those dots don't connect, or if we can learn something else about that process to see if when we feel that way again, we can have a different result. Okay, so that's the actual forum or whatever for the shoot analysis sheet. On the left side of the page, now that we're finally getting to this, are the results of this. So if I look here, it has all the right information on the top left corner, but it's telling me my worst category is round maintenance. And I guarantee you on all 3 days it's going to be round maintenance because of how poorly that was. So by just looking at this page, that's not very helpful to me because I know that was bad because I did not get a chance to practice. I made the decision to go last minute, so I didn't even have the ability to prepare because I didn't know I had to prepare for anything. So if I just look at that part of the shoot analysis sheet that it gives me back on, it's not very helpful because I want to know more about what happened in my round. And 0.83% room for growth in my round maintenance, and for that round alone, without how much that would have influenced everything else, that would have given me 0.1 targets back. Ooh, big whoop. But if you think about that, I don't know how to create a formula to where there's a influencer of round maintenance to all the other variables, but if I had done that better, it would also have influenced my energy levels, which would have influenced my strategy, which would have influenced my ability to focus and assess things. So I wouldn't have had to make the decision to go light on planning, to conserve energy. Probably wouldn't have made that mistake. I probably wouldn't have been able to focus better, a bunch of different things. And it's telling me right now my easiest thing that I can focus on to improve my score is my preparation. Big surprise, boys and girls. So it's telling me like worst category is a overarching main category. The easiest score improvement are generally subcategories within those main categories, and so it's telling me that, look, you idiot, if you practiced and you slept and you didn't schedule your thing like an idiot, you could have had a pretty easy improvement to your score. Basically, it's assessing that with the least amount of effort, that's the category that I can do to have the biggest level of improvement. Best category was visual acuity. There's a couple other that are going to be 100%, so I'm not too worried about that. Looking at the scorecard analysis, nothing really there for me to be able to take, of note there, especially understanding how the round went for me. The biggest standout point is that station number 3, my fourth last station. And so, I really was kind of riding with a lot of tension up until then, but knowing what happened there, I understand that situation, so it doesn't stand out to me too much anymore. If I look at my course difficulty, this says a negative 86%, so it's saying it's a very easy course, but that's comparing it to, it's saying it's giving me an negative 86% difficulty based off of if I rated everything a 3 out of 5, which I did a bunch of analysis on this to basically find out that the average NSCA competitive shooter at an average tournament would rate the difficulty of that station a 3. So for me, it was easier. For my own personal stuff, it would be nice to be able to have the course difficulty modifier subtly change and learn your numbers of input, so it can give you, based off of that. But I don't need to look at that too much. It's telling me my best possible score for the circumstances of that day is a 60. With everything that I had going into it, was a 63, and I shot a 62. So I would have to agree with that, because I would say that the two that I missed, the pair that I missed, that was a choice, and I probably always would have made that choice to approach that pair that way. And I probably would have gotten one bird back, I think, if I would have if I just put a little bit more effort into reading and planning for that one, for the target that I missed based off of a bad read. Let's see. So if I look down here at my scorecard analysis, it's showing me that my score percentage was a 94%, and my analysis of myself in terms of all those questions we just went through was a 92%. That's an important thing for me to look at, because if those two numbers are closely related, then I know that I was in a good headspace of awareness. I know, because basically I'm assessing my performance fairly accurately, because there is a pretty close to 1-to-1 ratio between the input of effort and the score. And so if I'm 2% off on a 66 target course, that's pretty good, because the smaller courses, throw those numbers off a little bit. But that's telling me right there that, okay, I was able to assess what my problem was well. And by the information that I was getting, I was making good decisions. Doesn't mean that the information I was getting was good, but by the information I was getting, I was able to make good decisions. If I go back down here and I'm looking at these numbers, this is just a summary of all the different categories. The +1 score is just like, what would you be able to do if you could easily influence everything by 1 point? Let's take out the preparation prior to the shoot, and things I'm looking bad at are awareness and the execution of my physical and emotional mechanics, but it's because of awareness. All these low numbers here are just completely related to my assessment of what I thought my body was feeling like and what I thought the capabilities were that I had. So, sorry, my camera keeps going out of focus. So, that's going to make a big difference. If you just look at the awareness, it's going to bring up a lot of other numbers there. I'm going to skip through here. There's some definitions. I'm going to skip through all of these. And this is the questions. I'm going to look at the summaries. Okay, so I can look in here and look at, broken down categories of what how I performed in all these subcategories here, and get a really good understanding of, how I was performing in, the effectiveness of my visual acuity, and go across the board and look it through all those things. I'm just kind of showing you this here because that way you understand what to do when you do these. I'm not going to go through this because I already did the work to make these assumptions and connect the dots by myself prior to doing this, or prior to this live, because I didn't want to waste the time doing all that on the air. This area here, though, is pretty good to understand these main categories. It ranks you. So the numbers that you see in each column are, like the first one, average score. So like my worst one was round maintenance. My second worst one was my physical mechanics. My best one was my pre-shot routine, tied with visual acuity, and so you can go through there and look at, the total order of main categories and how they rank, and kind of look at where to put focus on improvement in those categories. What I'd recommend is when you look at that and you say, okay, what are the questions in those categories? I'm going to go back and look at those questions, and that's what I need to try to build a practice plan around, which is what we'll do. Here's the exact same thing for all the subcategories. So it talks about like preparation, execution, research, planning, awareness, management, and effectiveness across the board of all the main categories, because those are topics within each of those things. And it's going to give me a sum of scores, rank them in terms of a percentage, shows me the influence of those things on my score. So I can look at, my poor preparation is more than double the amount of influence over the misses that I had than any other category. In fact, you can almost add them all up. And basically what I'm looking at here, by seeing the influence, I have almost 5% of preparation. My lack of preparation was 4.72% of an influencer on my score. Basically accounted for 4.72% of the total targets shot, which you can look at it as like, okay, so if I shot a 94%, it's almost half of all of my misses. It's more than half of my misses. Execution is, you could look at it as like 20% of my misses. Research is 1.25% of my or 12.5%. And that's how you can go through and do that. It kind of sometimes can work, sometimes it doesn't, depending on some other things. But yeah, we don't need to look. This stuff is easy to go through in depth later. Then you go into the comments and we don't need to look at that. Okay, so second day. Again, I'm not going to go through everything like I did just now for the first day. I did that so you can understand how the shoot analysis sheet works. But now I'm just going to go through and read my comments that I have to save the time. And then I'm going to run through the shoot analysis sheet real quick. So my comments on this, let's see if I have any comments on the scorecard analysis. Basically right here, I'll look through this real quick. I shot a 63 out of 66. I have one station here that I ranked other than a 1 difficulty, and I ranked it as a 2. I actually ran that station. Every target I missed was on a station that I ranked as a level 1. So that's not that great. So I shot a 63. The high score in the tournament on that course was a 66, a perfect score. That was Mike Luongo. And Wendell Cherry, the HOA, the guy that won the whole thing, shot a 65. So I was two back. I was 1 up the previous day on the HOA score. I was 2 back this day, so it netted me for being 1 back going into the last day from the lead. Again, started on station 7. So I can go back. I'm just going to go down and read my comments. Pre-round comments. I made adjustments and notes based off of analysis of day 1, of the day 1 round, in terms of specific things to emphasize in my awareness. specifically my level of tension, my ability to have fluidity in ocular movement, and increasing my comfortability in where to transition my body and eyes to after the first shot. So that going into that round, that was my plan based off of what I learned from the round the previous day. I recognize how much those things influenced my score. It wasn't the biggest influence over my score because that was obviously my preparation, but I can't change that. But I can change these things, so that was my plan. And let's see how it went for me. So again, not going to go through and read all these, but I will read the comments. So my comments on my preparation. Oh, it's the same thing. I don't need to read that. Okay, so my physical and emotional mechanics go into. Do I have any comments? I commented on my research. I still did not have the ability to get to the highest level of mental intensity focus through an analytical filter. I look at it as like, how analytical can I be in my decision making? I didn't have the ability to get to the highest level of that, but I was able to ramp it up slightly more than the previous day. My planning phase, good comment right here. I was much better in terms of planning, hugely influenced by higher level of physical self-awareness. This was consciously forced after analysis of day one. I was much more comfortable going through my physical setup routine this day. And so it's like a process I do physically as part of a routine to get me in the right position to call pull. I was much more comfortable doing it. And I did so with a high level of interoceptive awareness, which is what I wanted to do, which allowed me to have much more trust in my setup, giving me a slightly more calm emotional state at the start of every pair. I noticed a massive difference this day. And also, I had a lot of people will film during shooting, and I get people texting me videos or messaging me on social media videos of me shooting. And I got a lot of videos from all 3 days. And literally the level of control on my body and the precision at which my body moved in my setup and in everything, it was noticeably different and better for me, watching the videos of day 2 versus day 1. And it was completely 100% focused and a result of how much I forced myself to be interoceptive, which is paying attention to the way my body feels inside my body. And again, if you want more on that, go to series 1, episode 3. I said, this was a conscious choice to put more effort into after day 1 because I noticed that I was more extraceptive during my setup routine that round and did not feel at peace and present at the start of each pair like I would have preferred. And I thought this was funny, but I totally consciously recognized why this happened. I said, this literally this came about by being self-conscious about shooting with Richard Faulds and how he would perceive what I was doing in my routine the first day, which was a complete lack of presence on my part. And talk about the strangeness of that. I really, really respect Richard Faulds for his mechanics. It's so beautiful to watch him shoot, and I hate to say this because it makes other people feel bad, but I really do say he is my favorite person to watch shoot. And I just think he's a great guy, and I really respect everything about the way that he shoots, the way that he approaches the game. He's a gentleman and a sportsman, and he's the man. And I have shot with him before, and I don't know why that I was feeling this. I was like, oh, I wonder if he's gonna, think this is weird. Why would I have that thought? I don't know, but it happens, and it pulled me from my presence where I was not able to feel my body going through the movements because I was thinking about that for at least the first 2 stations of the first day. And I recognized it as it was happening. I didn't do a good job of getting that out of my head. And so, I like to be honest, that's pretty, dumb and embarrassing, but it's true. And that's the type of thing that can make you miss. Let's see, any other comments? For the execution phase of my visual mechanics are much better this day. I gave myself almost all 10 out of 10s. My execution phase, though, was a 90%. My comment on it was that I still had some inability to allow my eyes to move fluidly during transition due to subtle bit of anxiety to miss. This helped me with my intensity of focus, but hurt in terms of being able to engage in smooth pursuit ocular movement as early in the line as I would have liked. A few times I overestimated the level of calmness I thought I would have moving to the second shot and should have gave myself a little bit more room for error instead of being so tight with my eyes on focal points for the second shot. So basically what I'm saying here is I was overestimating my ability to use my eyes, and I was making plans that were kind of a little bit too a little bit too all in or nothing, when I didn't really need to be and I shouldn't have been. And it cost me a little bit. And you see that present itself in the fact that I'm missing shots on stations I'm ranking on as a 1 out of 5 as opposed to the one station I ranked as a 2. Let's see. Visual acuity, 100% in everything. Relaxation prior to the shot, 100% in everything. That's my awareness, management, and effectiveness of my management. Self-analysis of my pre-shot routine. I gave myself 100% in every category. A comment on my awareness, though, was that my pre-shot routine was slightly more in-depth this day and felt more at peace compared to day one, which felt more like checking off the boxes due to my lack of ability to control ADHD conscious dialogue. So first day, like I said, some of it was about Richard Fald, some of it was about, who knows what else was going on in my head, but I felt like I was going through the motions, but thinking about something else as I was physically doing something, and the two never blended, and it didn't allow it to be effective for me. It was just kind of like wasting time. But this day I felt much, much better. Everything I did was purposeful and productive because of my attention to a focus on a higher level of interoceptive awareness and cueing those types of thoughts and paying attention to those types of things. This round felt much more in control and present-minded. It was more peaceful. I accomplished this by forcing a higher level of consciously decided interoceptive awareness. So I already said that. This is how you know I'm not lying, because before I'm reading it, I'm telling you the same thing. Okay. Post-shot routine. Do I have any comments? None. And effectiveness of presence, none. No comments. I gave myself 100 in all of them. But let's look at the shoot analysis sheet. So if I look at that, I missed one target on 3 different stations. It's telling me that I shot the high score, my best possible score. Honestly, I kind of feel like that's true. I really do feel like I finished that round, and I didn't feel like I knew there was a 66 out there. I was able to get done before Wendell did, and I went over and watched him on his last station. I saw him finish on a 65, and I don't think I could have shot a 65 on that course with everything that I had going into that. Not that I couldn't, given other circumstances, like if I get to practice and a lot of other things. It's not taking away anything from anybody else, because you'll hear when I interview Wendell, he had the same situation as me. So it's not an excuse that I'm not preparing in that way, because other people are doing the same thing. But I just felt like being honest with myself. I felt very good about my score that day. If anything, that could have maybe been 1 off. Maybe I could have shot a 64. But I was, again, happy with it. Again, visual acuity and round maintenance, preparation, all the stuff in the top looks the same because it's using the same. I had to grade myself the same on round maintenance in all 3 days because it's all based off of this same shoot. But again, if I were to go into other parts of this sheet and break apart the individual categories, I'll learn much more information about what I'm looking at. My categories here, look at this. I got average of a perfect score in presence, average of a perfect score in pre-shot, perfect score in post-shot, perfect score in relaxation, perfect score in visual acuity. I had a 9.8, a 10, and a 9 in my visual mechanics. I had a 9.7, 9.8, and a 10 in my physical and emotional mechanics. This is about as good as I have ever gotten. Like, I literally have only ever one time been able to get a perfect 10 in every category. It's just that round maintenance area that I have a 7.2 and an 8.7, which is out of my control after I get to the tournament. So, not saying that was the sole reason why I did not shoot a 65 on that course, but I felt like I did well. So this was a very, very good round. And the interesting thing to note here is that I was feeling like I was building momentum. I was getting more and more in tune with my body. I was learning more things. Everything was working really good. And so because of that, like I was incredibly confident going into Sunday. I had zero. I was not like worried about the position. I looked at the scores. Saw Michael Wongo in first, 3 targets ahead of me. Derek Mine in second, 2 targets ahead of me. Wendell Cherry in third, 1 target ahead of me. And I thought, I'm going to win this easily. That's honest to God, that's how I felt. And it was not an overconfident level of thinking. I recognize the difference in stupidity and arrogance versus whatever you would call the way I was feeling. I don't really know what it was. It was just an assessment of how I was in tune with my body. I had a very high level of mindfulness, high level of awareness, high level of attention to my body. And I knew I was making good decisions, and every round was getting better, and every round my decision making was getting better, which was eliminating mistakes. And I knew the next day would be even better than this day. Plus, throw on top of that the fact that we have a super squad re-squatted to the 3 people that I'm shooting with the 3 people that I have to beat. I was feeling very, very good about this because I knew that if the one thing that I have a problem with sometimes is focus. If you put me on a squad with the 3 people that are ahead of me in the whole tournament, it's not going to be a problem for me to focus. That's going to be a good environment for me. The intensity of that and the seriousness of that can only help me. And I was very excited to shoot with Wendell. But definitely was not going to go easy on him. And just so everybody knows, and I'll put this out in the public, that right before we started the round, I told him I was going to kick his ass, and it didn't work too good. So I'm sure he's going to bring that up when I interview him. But yeah, we can, don't need to go into these categories this too much right now. If you're listening to this podcast, you'll have no idea why I just said what I said. But okay, so let's go into the last day and just read the comments that I have here for the Sunday round, and then we'll put together everything. Okay, so start time 1:00 p.m. Starting station was 1 now. High score on that course was a 66 out of 68. Clint Hinton shot that, I believe. Great score. The score that that Wendell shot on that was a 64. So if you scroll down here, I shot a 60, so I was 4 light. So I went into it 1 behind him that day, and I finished 5 total because I lost 4 on him in that round. So if we look at this round, so we start on station 1. I missed 1 bird on my first station. It was the second bird of my first pair. Then I went on a good streak. I ran the next one, ran the next one, ran the next one, ran the next one. I did not miss the bird on the station 1 because of nerves. I'm not going to get into that right now because I remember writing about that a little bit in my comments, and I'll just save it for that. Then I missed another single bird, ran a station. I was feeling really good at the point in time when I had 4 stations left. 3, 4. I believe I was tied with Wendell for the lead. It was rolling really good. Then we get to station 8. I graded as a difficulty of 2. I scored a 3 out of 6. That was where I had a big swing. I'm trying to see if there's any other station I graded as difficult. Yeah, I had 1 difficulty of 2 station. Prior to that, it was station 6, and I scored a 5 out of it. It was my second miss of the round. Interestingly enough, though, on that station, that was an issue of my gun was fitting very strangely that day, and I talk about that a little bit later on in the comments. But basically, I was unable to make good mechanical moves this day, And the shot that I missed, it was difficulty of two. It definitely was for me. That's the second bird was a bird that is hard for me. But on my second pair, when I shot the second bird, the gun just straight up came straight out of my shoulder, which is super rare. I don't know if I've ever had that happen to me in 10 years. Um, and it was completely 100% my fault, um, due to a little bit of the fit and some other things. So I really feel actually like I was not worried. Honestly, it was the same exact reason why I missed a bird on the first station. It was due to a gun, like a nothing, not like a problem with my gun. It was a problem with me that I was unable to do a specific thing, and it was influencing my ability to move correctly. I talked about that a lot in the comments, but so far I'm basically, 7 stations in, and I've missed 2 birds. But I know that I'm playing it well enough that the 2 birds that I've missed really are not my fault. I mean, I missed them, but it was due to a very strange issue that I was dealing with. Not because I didn't know how to shoot the shot, do the shot, or I had a bad strategy decision or anything. I felt like I was playing a good round of shooting here, until we got to station 8. And I dropped 3 birds. That was a weird situation where I was up first and I didn't get a good ability to. It was a, it was a quartering incoming tower with a really complex technical line, and the second bird was like this looping, flopping floater bird, um, uh, coming from the right at a pretty good distance, and like crossing. And because of the issue with my gun in that moment, in my mechanics, I was nervous on where I knew I should. The highest probability shot for that second bird, was in a place that was the hardest for the issue that I was dealing with in that moment, and I was struggling back and forth with making a decision, on what to do. So, anyways, here's my pre-round comments. This is a long one, but I think this is where the value comes into what this episode, goes off, like when you start to get to the culmination of the shoot on Sunday. So I was very confident Saturday night about this round. 0 negative thoughts, very healthy mindset. I was slightly worried about overshooting Saturday and my energy levels, but ultimately was not worried because I didn't start this round. I wasn't supposed to start this round until 1 o'clock p.m. So basically, like, during the rounds that I was shooting on Saturday, being that I shot from 8 o'clock to 5:30 p.m. straight with no break to be able to eat or even get, I literally didn't even be able to get off the course for that whole time. I was like, this is not good. I'm wearing down. I can feel it. I'm burning the candle at 2 ends. And I probably should have like left in the middle of my, or probably just not shot my, my super sporting, but it was just, I was having fun. So, it was bad, dumb. So that's how I was feeling before the next day. But during that night, I'm like, it'll be okay. I don't shoot until 1, so I can sleep in. And then I was scheduled to shoot AFS at 11 a.m. on Sunday, and I planned to use that as a warm up. And I was considering skipping out on it to get some rest due to the terrible sleep the night before. So like I woke up on Sunday. I was stayed up till like 3 in the morning on Saturday night because I could not go to sleep, couldn't shut my brain off. I was physically and mentally exhausted, but I couldn't stop thinking about, like, I was stuck in an analytical mindset from how I did, like, because I shot so much and I was paying attention to so many things, and it's just my ADHD. And so I couldn't go to sleep. And so I woke up I was like, oh, I'll sleep in. I'm not going to set my alarm. If I sleep through AFS, I just won't show up. If I wake up early, I'll make up a decision on what to do. So I didn't go to sleep till 3, but woke up early, like my normal time. Anyway, I was like, well, crap, I don't know what to do. I was just playing around, trying to make a decision. And basically I was in a stall point where I was like, it took me so long to make the decision to go that when I finally made the decision to go, I was rushed to go. And so that wasn't a good decision either. It says I was considered skipping out on it to get some rest due to terrible sleep the night before. This was caused by being too mentally engaged all day Saturday and not being able to shut my mind off at all to sleep. Should have given myself more downtime to unwind. Ultimately ended up waking up too early, but want to sit around. Oh, but I didn't want to sit around all day until 1:00 p.m. So last minute, I decided to try to make the AFS, but I showed up last minute. I noticed as soon as I woke up that something felt strange in my body. I was weak. Had low energy. I had lack of precision in my movement. I was very foggy thought process in my brain. It just felt like, honestly, it felt like I was sick. Not just tired, but I never ended up getting sick, so I don't really know what happened. But I figured it was just that I needed to wake up more. I increased my caffeine intake, but nothing changed. I headed to the range that morning, and it was the only day of the 3 days of the main event where I felt zero emotion. I tried everything I could to feel something. I was looking for excitement and nervousness, as well as trying to feel emotionally invested in my performance, but nothing worked, and I felt very flat, basically like I did not care. It definitely was not a defense mechanism of trying to guard against potential failure, as I felt very confident despite what my body felt like. Like the how do I describe this? There is, I know, I almost can tell if it's going to be a day that I'm going to be able to shoot really, really well, because I actually will get emotional prior to the round thinking about the round, because I can tell that it means something to me. So like if I listen to a specific song on the way there that means something, or the lyrics are will hit you in a certain way. I mean, literally, it's like you almost want to choke up. It's kind of like the feeling that, I don't know how many people that aren't really into sports or that have never experienced something like this in their life, where they accomplish a huge momentous thing. I'm sure everybody can relate to the fact that it's a very emotional thing. Like you can cry because you're happy, and there are certain times in rounds where, or at tournaments, it's very few and far between for me, where I feel that way on my way to the range. And the first 2 days, I felt that way on the way to the range. And I was like, this is not common for me. And I love it, because I know I'm emotionally invested in this, which is going to help me focus. I'm going to care. It was like, it was really, really rare, and but also helpful. And on my way to the round that morning, I didn't feel that at all. I couldn't do any. I was trying everything I could to think about or somehow create that feeling of investedness, and I could not. I just did not care. But I also at the same time had no lack of confidence that I was going to shoot well. But it just felt very weird. The AFS results felt way off. It says I had a consistent problem of not feeling like I had precision in my hands to be able to proprioceptively mount my gun. A lot of shots felt poorly placed in my shoulder. To be fair, I decided to approach this round with a carefree attitude, basically just goofing off, and did not want to run any sort of physical or mental routine during this event, as I was afraid I only had so much gas in the tank, so to speak, due to feeling mentally and physically exhausted, and did not want to rob from my main event to shoot well in the AFS. This is a predetermined conscious decision to change the way that I shoot in the AFS event, because I was worried about I could definitely tell there was something wrong. I didn't want to go put 110% in when I only had 70% to play with, and I definitely didn't want to do it in an event that I was not there to win. Looking back on this choice, I said I think it would have better suited me to use AFS not as a physical warm-up, but instead a mental warm-up, in order to practice running my routine, practice being mentally present and serious and focused. because I definitely felt the pull of the mental state that I used during AFS in my main event round. I felt too carefree, loose, and inattentive. So that I I in the very beginning of my round of the main event, I was like, I immediately had the thought, I just literally practiced the wrong thing. I practiced something that will hurt me because I took it not seriously in a moment when I judged the situation wrong. I thought that because I felt the way that I felt, I didn't have enough gas to be able to put a lot of effort in and focus really hard because I didn't have any emotional investment in that round that day. I wasn't feeling any nerves. I was really loose, and I thought, this is not a good sign. I need to dial it back because I only have a little bit to play with, and I need to save that for the main event. Really, what it was distraction. I was just not present in the moment that would have allowed me to feel those emotions, that would have allowed me to be focused and be attentive. And so while I shot AFS, I was having fun and goofing off, and I was practicing the mental process of not focusing. So I helped myself do that. And that was a really, really poor strategy decision on my part. And I didn't realize it until I was in the middle of the main, because I felt that I could, basically it put me into a place where I had way too much extraceptive awareness. I was feeling things I shouldn't feel, or feeling things that would make a big difference, feeling things that if I was in the right state of mind and of attentiveness and focus, probably wouldn't have even happened because I would have been more physically self-aware. I will say that I had the intent and the conscious choice to be very physically self-aware of things, and I was very physically self-aware of how my body felt and everything, because it was so different. It was like a big, shining light in my face for the whole day, but I couldn't really quite put a pinpoint on what it was, and so it led to a high level of indecisiveness that really cost me. My preparation prior to the event and during, that's the same thing as every other thing. Okay, so my physical and emotional mechanics, I give myself a 10, 10, and a 90. My comment was, I felt like I was trying to put equal amounts of effort into the research phase this round as I did in the Saturday round, but it felt very forced. So it would be a mental note for me to say, okay, is there a trend? And when I feel that way and I try to do that when I feel the way that when I feel the way that I felt that morning and that day and that round, when I try to put that much effort in, do I always feel like it's forced or not? That would be a thing that I would want to look back on my other sheets. My comments on my planning for my physical and emotional mechanics is that I started off the round on the first station I'm commenting this because I gave myself pretty good scores, except for my emotional response to thinking, how does the target make me feel versus how do I need to feel? So I said I started off the round on the first station by adapting the cadence of everyone else on my squad, and where they shot the second target of the pair. I backed off on the planning on the first station due to a lack of ability to focus, and kind of felt like I could just do what everyone else did. I should have made my own plan, as the second bird of the pair I would have normally shot earlier than everyone else, and the plan I decided to make forced too much barrel awareness for me on the first pair and caused a miss. The whole round I was dealing with needing to plan mechanics and breakpoints around my higher than normal propensity to have increased barrel awareness due to my lack of trust in my mechanics and ability to precisely place my gun in my shoulder during the mount/movement. This forced mental weakness in the form of fear that if I allowed myself to see my gun, I started to doubt if I was seeing it correctly and would get cautious or careful. Because basically what was happening was I felt strangely weak. Like the weakness feeling you get almost like if you're, I don't know, it kind of felt like I was getting I didn't have the symptoms of a cold, but it felt like I was getting a cold where it's like your body just doesn't have good strength and precision. And it was a complete 180-degree change in the trend from the previous 2 days. I was like building it, and then it just flipped around and turned around and ran out the door. And because it was so different, I was hyper aware of it. And I literally could not make good moves, and the precision required to make some of the moves that I need to make, I just did not have. And what kept happening is the gun would get in the wrong place on specific shots. And like I was like, you forced me to be too conscious of my body, where I was like trying to plan things because I knew they weren't good. And so in the middle of trying to plan things during a shot, I was feeling it, but controlling it consciously instead of non-consciously, like controlling my body consciously instead of non-consciously, because I was trying to you know, avoid an error. And so that just led to a lot of poor placement of my gun and my shoulder. And then because of that, it flipped me in the other direction, where I was like, I need to avoid that. And or maybe I can't avoid that. And so if I had shots that forced me into seeing my gun more because of the way the shot was, then when I saw it, I didn't trust it because it looked different. Something looked weird because it was either too low on my shoulder or off to the side or whatever it was. And so I got very conscious in trying to make these corrections because of that. And it was just really bad. It was like the worst day for me to shoot that course. Had I had shot the red course on Sunday, I don't think it would have affected my score at all. But this one, it did. So just interesting. My execution phase, I gave myself 100. I said, I actually feel like I executed almost every shot exactly how I planned. Thankfully, I had a high level of awareness this day and knew exactly what I could or could not do, and I feel like I fairly accurately planned around my weaknesses and capitalized as best as possible on strengths that I had in the bag for the round. So it sounds like what I just explained prior to reading that is the opposite of what I just read, but what I mean by that is that what was happening was that the misses were forcing my awareness of what I was doing. And then I decided, why am I sticking to the plan that I have? I need to change my plan. And then I was able to execute exactly how I wanted to every time, but I was making bad decisions based off of the information I had and my indecision on how to use that information. This is my visual mechanics. My comments on the execution of that, I said, quite possibly my best day for visual mechanics. I made a conscious effort to ramp that up each day of the main event due to feeling like this was a weak point in my ability at the current moment. Very possibly that my lack of any emotion this day allowed my eyes to move more freely, but that's not always a good thing. So I really do think that those two things are related. I mentioned I felt no emotion. I wasn't emotionally invested. I didn't care. I didn't feel nervous. Well, because of that, it's easy not to be anxious in the shots. And so then when you're not anxious in shots, your eyes move much more fluidly, more calmly, more relaxed. And they definitely felt good. Like I thought my eye work was very, very good on Sunday. It just, the rest of my body sucked. Let's see. No comments on my visual acuity. Awareness of my relaxation. My comment on this was, interoceptive awareness was highest this round out of all rounds in terms of my emotional and physical states, and which it makes sense. It was a different day. I was cued to paying attention. I was incredibly aware of how my body felt, almost maybe too much so. Let's say comments on my management of my relaxation. I said I did a really good job of attempting to find a solution every time I felt something was off. I never really had any issue with physical tension or nerves from feeling pressure, so I did not have to address that at all. The main consistent issue that I had was fighting an internal battle of lack of trust in my movement because I felt like I had much less physical control the whole day due to whatever was causing that. This just caused me to second guess a lot of my planning on shots that hung in the air or stalled out that would force high levels of barrel awareness due to required shot placement. Like, because if on shots that were stalling or like didn't have, call it lead, shots that had no lead and it forced me to see the barrel, it was causing indecisiveness for me because of my lack of precision in my movement. A lot of times I felt myself just literally not knowing if what I was doing was right. A feeling of literal cluelessness is what I wrote, which pulled my awareness heavily into the extraceptive realm of being lead conscious and unable to connect to feeling how I wanted my body to feel while I was connecting with the target. So like I knew prior to the shot, I knew how I would want it to feel, but it would feel, I couldn't feel it while I was trying to do it correctly, which is a hard thing to explain because you need to be visually and extraceptively connected to the bird. But I was like trying too hard consciously to force my body to do something that I would not feel the way that I wanted it to feel, because the way I wanted it to feel needed to be I could only make it feel that way if I did it non-consciously, and that's what was happening. I was not moving non-consciously. I was moving consciously, which is different than me saying I was aiming consciously. I literally mean I was controlling my body consciously, and that's what made me feel weird in my movement and unable to feel fluid, and it caused a bunch of weird problems. I said slow floppers at longer distance felt like they had zero connection because I was shooting purely based on lead. I was fully aware of this throughout the whole round. I noticed it during AFS, but was just hesitant to use my normal approach to this problem, which is relying on my mechanics and shooting a more difficult breakpoint where the target is more under power in a straight line because of my lack of trust to make small, short physical movements with the gun. I had the lack of trust of my movements because of the way my body felt, but the problem was that the small movements that are harder to make is really the easiest solution to the other problem that I was having. So it's like I had a problem and the solution was something that I didn't want to do because of the way I felt, and so that's why I was stuck in this middle ground. I said basically the whole round I struggled to feel comfortable picking one strategy and committing to it. I was listening to my body and my mind, but I was not acting on it. I played it safe because I was cautious, but I didn't play it smart. So that was the biggest reason for me. Well, what happened in terms of the comments on my effectiveness? I said when I actually made a choice to do something, I was able to fairly well. The problem was that it would take me missing a target to make the decision to actually commit to the strategy or approach that I already knew was the best mechanically. That was the frustrating thing. I mean, if you were there, or if you watched a video, if anybody has videos and watched me during that round, you would, listening to me talk about this round this way, you would probably have no idea if you saw me that I was thinking all those things and felt that way, because I was having a blast shooting. But that was the problem. I was not intense. I wasn't focused. I was having way too much fun. Trying to do these problem solving things in my head, but it wasn't like I was frustrated and showing it. I was more confused in a sense. Comments on effectiveness for my pre-shot routine. I said, by the time we got to station 8, started on station 1 of station 7 this day due to super squad rotation re-squatting based on score. The course manager told me that a shooter on my squad had complained about the length of my pre-shot routine and that I needed to cut it back by 5 seconds, or every time I went over 20 seconds, I would incur a 2-point deduction to my score. This did not worry me at all. I had no negative emotional reaction to it, but the problem that it created was I had no idea how long I was taking while trying to run my pre-shot routine, and so I noticed myself going through the motions, but at the same time trying to count how long it was taking, which ultimately led to me accomplishing nothing and it being more of a distraction to try to run a routine. I should have just completely abandoned most of it instead of trying to compress it. So that was only in my effectiveness, which responds to the question of how much I relate to this statement, which is every time I noticed I was not using a pre-shot routine and felt like I needed to, I was successful in doing it for the next pair, and I felt like it made a difference. There were a lot of times when I was, I'm at the level in my mental game where I don't have the same routine that I run every time all the time. I base my routine off of my body and the way it feels and my thoughts and where they are and my emotions and what they are and how my eyes work and all these things. So constantly adjusting my pre-shot routine. And so sometimes I don't run one at all for a pair, and the next one I might. And so a lot of the times when I noticed I wasn't running a pre-shot routine that was correct, and I felt like I needed to change it, it worked successfully the next time. But when that happened, and I tried to change it, I was going through the motions of changing it and trying to shorten it. But while doing that, I was trying to count the amount of time that it was taking, and so my actions were not helpful at all because I was putting the effort in, but it wasn't working because my thoughts were on something else. So, but the problem is the time constraint where I can't just stop and restart and get to a place where I need to be because I have a time limit where if I go over, I get -2 points to my score. So it's been, I mean, that rule came out like a week before the U.S. Open, and I had not even practiced yet, so I didn't have a chance to work that into how, what happens if that happens to me. What do I do if that happens to me? So I kind of like, it was the first time that it happened, and my approach to it was well intended, but ineffective. Really, now I learned that when that does happen, it's more beneficial to just completely abandon the pre-shot routine. Basically, just do a breath to physically decompress, and then just go, because if trying to do anything just is counterproductive. But I really don't think that did not cost me anything. I don't think. I mean, that only happened on my last four stations. It was mentioned to me right before the station that I dropped 3 targets on, which took me from the tied, I think, at the lead, or maybe one back from the lead and tied with Derek or whatever it was before I dropped 3 targets on my 4th last station. But I can 100% tell you I did not miss those targets because of that scenario. I missed them because of the style of bird, and my indecision in how to approach it and being first up and not getting enough looks at it. It was nothing to do with the pre-shot routine. Cyclone says, you answered Brad's question on the red-green low light and red-green highlight lenses, although you did not state what peel lens that you use on gray washed-out background. I am red-green deficient as well. Okay, cool. So for the... what if I have... No, I don't. They're in my car. My red-green... the lenses that I use for a washed-out background in an orange target in the sky, like a white, cloudy, washed-out sky with an orange target, are the... I forget the name of them, but they don't make them anymore, unfortunately. Let me see if I can very quickly pull up. Okay. Here we go. That can't be right. Maybe they do. Oh. It is... I like the DC the DC color, which I don't know what that stands for because they're old. I don't think they make them anymore, but they're blue. I'll send you a link to this. Copy link address. Okay. There we go. Hopefully you can see that. Anyways, that's what I like to use in the washed out background. And I don't think they make them anymore, but I'm pretty sure you can get them from a dealer somewhere. I'm sure a dealer has some of those left over because they are not a very popular lens at all. because they're for shooting. They're not a popular lens because they're made for archery, I believe. But they are I call them my magic glasses because you put those things on and they I am not kidding you, it will make an orange bird in a washed out sky that is almost impossible to see turn into a, not kidding you, almost black. It doesn't change the color of the sky, but the target turns black, and it is the most. They're like they're magic. They're voodoo glasses. I don't know how they work, but they're freaking amazing. Um, okay, so let's see. Post shot analysis. No comments. Really, there's a short one, but I don't need to read it. Management of my presence. I gave myself a 50% on my management. Basically, just saying that I really had a problem committing to. Basically, it's explained in previous comment section. I had a problem committing to listening to myself and making a decision based off of it. But the reason for that is because the answer to the way I felt was something that I didn't. The emotional state felt one way, and the solution to the emotional state was a specific thing physically or mechanically, but the requirement of that mechanical thing was a specific thing physically, and that specific thing that was a requirement for me to be able to do what I needed to do to solve the problem of the emotional state I was in, I did not have that physical ability in that moment because of whatever was going on with my sleep and whatever it was. It was a very uniquely weird day, and I did not have the ability to do it. So it was very hard for me to make the decision. It was scary for me to make the decision to say, yeah, let me do this solution, which I don't physically have. I know I don't have the physical ability to do this right now, but I feel like it's my only solution. And so that's why I had so much indecisiveness. It was a very hard situation to try to figure out in the middle of a round. And then I said my effectiveness of my presence was 100% though, even though my management of it was 50%, because effectiveness says like each time I made an adjustment to my round strategy and plan making due to a change in my presence of self, it resulted in a sustained or improved level of shooting. I gave myself 100% because my comment was literally every time I actually decided to act on my analysis, it worked perfectly. I'm just very, very, very thick-headed. So there's all that. So that is the analyses of the 3 of my rounds for the main event. Yeah, and of course, Cyclone, happy to help out. But that's the analysis of the 3 different rounds of my main event at the U.S. Open. And here is the last day on the left, the shoot analysis sheet. You can see we started on 1 and literally look at these last 4 stations. They were horrendous. I went 50%, 100%, 67%, 88% on those last 4 stations. You normally look at that and you think, oh, 100% nerves. I got nervous. I choked it out. Couldn't handle the pressure. And that's where I would have gone completely wrong if I made the assessment of that being the case. If I was not paying attention to the way I was feeling, I wouldn't know what caused that. And you could look at a scorecard and think that was the case and think that you need to work on your pre-shot routine. But the reality of it is that is literally the furthest thing from the truth. It was actually the complete opposite problem. I wish that I was nervous because it would have helped. So it's just a very interesting, complex situation, which makes it very hard to diagnose and say, okay, here's the plan moving forward, and this is how we need to make this assessment and what we need to do to change. Very interesting situation, which is fun to kind of figure out to the analysis of. I shot a 60, and it told me, my shoot analysis is telling me that with the effort that I put in, it's telling me that a 61 is my highest score for that day. So, I I would have to. Interesting. I haven't looked at these on purpose yet before, but I would say that my best possible score on that. Honestly, I think that's kind of maybe being too honest for me. Like it's almost hurting because um, a 61 on that course. I mean, I could go back and read the text message that I sent to my girlfriend immediately after that course, and I specifically said that I learned a lot from this very specific style of targets and how they influence a lot of different things. I really don't think that um, like that course was a beautifully set course, and it ripped me apart. Not because the targets were that I'm not good at those targets that were on there. It was because of just the state of everything around my game that allowed me to be in that position that I was in with all the craziness of all the other things involved in that day. That I just didn't have. I know I would have not been able to win I would not have shot a 190. Like in all things perfect, 191 was not in my realm. But I would say that give me. I think I should have shot a 64. Would be my best. I think my best possible score if everything was right. But I think a 61 for sure was probably my best possible score with that day. Like with all the scenario, the way everything felt, I think 61 was the best possible. Um, so, um, so we read all the comments and everything. Okay, so basically, what we are going to do is at this point, we are done with the self-analysis, and what I was going to do is go into the next parts where I use that information to determine the weak points in my current state of my game, and I have all these. Look at all these notes for today. And I was going to go into the weak points. I was going to make all the assessments. Determine what went wrong and go through all that. Specifically, go through those areas to focus on, how to do that. Go through it. But that literally I was a little over ambitious. I think we're already 3 hours in, and I feel like I'm halfway through. So it's already 11 o'clock for those of you on the East Coast. So I think the smart plan is to make Wednesday another formal episode of the podcast instead of an informal hangout. And we'll just continue this on Wednesday, I think, is the smart plan, because that I think would allow me to not feel like I have to rush through this part, and this is going to be where it's going to be more important to have engagement for this part of it coming up, and I don't want to do it while everybody's sleeping. So that will be the plan. So we will call it there. And I want to thank all you guys for being involved. I'm going to switch over to this real quick. Just a little reminder to, if you want to, purchase the Journey podcast vest on the BAREPELT website. If you scroll all the way up in the chat to one of the very first comments, I linked I posted a link that takes you straight to it if you can't find it on the website. Because if you do purchase it and you post a picture with the hashtag that I have on the screen, that you have to come watch the video if you're listening to the audio only version. If you post a picture or send me an email with that hashtag, then I will enter you into a thing to win $1,600 of instruction. And Hank brought up a good question. When am I going to do the drawing? So as of right now, I realize how crappy it is to say that I don't have an end date for something like this. But the reason why I don't have an end date is because I don't want to set an end date where I mean, the vest just came out. You have to order it, they have to make it, and then they have to come in and get delivered to you, and then you have to have a chance to go out and shoot and take a picture of you using it. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to wait until I see the first person post one, and then that way I know that, the period of time, however long it takes to get them, is over, and people are starting to get them, and then I'm gonna figure out a amount of time after the first post for one, to where we'll publicly announce an end date to this, and when that's the case, I will publicly announce that. That way, it's not open ended, and everyone knows when it'll be over. So that'll be the plan. But I will announce it publicly, and we'll do it live, and I'll do the drawing live. I'll put everybody's things up, and I'll run an automatic thing, and we'll see who wins. What about a no earlier than date? Oh, definitely, it's gonna be no earlier than I would. When the contest ends, I would say definitely no earlier than 2 months from now, because let's just say it takes 3 to 3. I don't have any idea. I don't want to put the words in the mouth of BAREPELT. They may be able to get it to you in a week, but it also could take 3 weeks or 5 weeks to get to you. I have no idea how long it will take them to make this. I have anytime I order a vest, I just do it, and it doesn't matter to me when it comes, and I kind of lose track of how long it takes. So, I would say it's definitely going to be no earlier than 2 months from now is when the end date is, because we got to allow some time for people to get them and shoot. Cool. Well, I think that's it. If I missed your question today, I apologize. I will go back through and look at all the questions that we're submitting. I'll look at some of the questions that were submitted and see if I missed any, and then I'll make sure I bring them up in the episode on Wednesday. But then I would say that should be it. I appreciate everybody. Okay, Trevor's saying 4 to 6 week is usual lead time. Okay, so let's say if you ordered them today, 6 weeks from now is when you get it. Give yourself another 2 weeks at least minimum to be able to go out and shoot. And so then I need to have at least, a month of time that gives people at least a month to buy them. So if you buy them now, you get it in 6 weeks. If you buy it in a month from now, you'll get it in, 10 weeks. So I would say no earlier than 10 weeks from now. And Hank says, is the Rorschach design something I can use for another custom vest? Yeah, Hank, when I'll give you a call, I'll text you after this, but I'll give you a call in the morning, or let me just see what my schedule is tomorrow. I'm in April. I can give you a call. Tomorrow's Tuesday. Eight or 9 my time, but I'll just shoot you a text message now and we can figure it out. And then when I do talk to you, I'll explain how I did it, because it's a really, really complicated process to be able to do that, because you cannot get that in a high resolution, so you have to upscale the resolution and have a really high DPI so that the printers will print it, because it's not a pattern that you can create in Adobe Illustrator using paths, which are infinitely scalable. So if you, basically, long story short, the answer is yes. You can do that, but I'll show you how, and you may just need to send it to me, and I can do it for you, because once you get the design you like, if you send the thing to me, I can upscale it for you because I have a program that costs a lot of money that you have to use. Otherwise, it doesn't work. Um, but cool. And yeah, thank you. I thank everybody for being here. I know this is a long one. It's actually not that long for a live. A lot of my lives go 4 hours plus. But we're at the I kind of maybe planned this poorly, where I should have had the second half in the first half, and then I could do this part, and you guys could come back and watch this part later. But I don't really think that's as good of a way to do it as this. So it's just getting late, and I want to make sure we have engagement. Um, but should be good. Cool. Thank you guys so much. Good night, everybody, and we will see you on Wednesday.